Welcome to Novel Love Hearing. We bring you hundreds of novel audiobooks covering every genre and every kind of story you can imagine. Action? We've got it. Adventure? Absolutely. Horror? Of course. Whether it's the legendary Uchiha Massacre or outrageous tales like stealing Naruto's and Sasuke's women, you'll find it here. From epic series like One Piece, Bleach, Fairy Tail, and Hunter x Hunter, to countless other adventures, our library has it all. Love novels but don't have time to read? No worries, just plug in your earbuds, sit back, and let the story take over. Good listening, and happy hearing. Solomon's face showed bulging veins. He was a bit angry. After activating his skills, he violently and quickly dispatched these uninvited guests. Chapter 97, The Establishment of Sanctuary Town in the World of Space-Time Fragments. Solomon looked guilty. Boss, Lin Yi waved his hand, indicating no need to say more. At this moment, his attention was entirely on that unification device. This seemingly insignificant small device could actually lure out hidden enemies. He suddenly realized that to completely control other worlds of space-time fragments, it was necessary to eliminate all enemies. An entire hour passed, and apart from the initial 3 zombies that appeared, no other uninvited guests visited. As the countdown entered the last few seconds, the light of the unification device suddenly shrank, its deep blue color gradually fading to pure white. The entire device began to melt into liquid, slowly pouring into the hole left by the beam. After the last drop of liquid flowed into the hole, the opening quickly closed up again, and the system announced unification completed. The wall of mist began to tremble, the grass started to change color, and the trees turned green. A net-like fence appeared along the wall of mist, just like the other fences within the shelter. Congratulations, you have captured a small space-time fragment. As a reward, your shelter receives 2,000 experience points, and acquires 500,000 square meters of land, along with all the resources on that land. Note: the current space-time fragment depth is 956 meters, with a 56-meter discrepancy from the shelter. Until the depth difference is eliminated, the shelter cannot be expanded again. Do you wish to eliminate the depth difference? Lin Yi's eye twitched. He knew this certainly wouldn't be free. Damn. How much will it cost me? Eliminating the depth difference of the shelter will cost you 200,000 units of biological material and 75,000 coins. You're trying to bleed me dry. Do you think I'll agree? Think again. 10 minutes later, an earthquake began. The earthquake lasted for more than a minute, but the magnitude wasn't particularly intense, and it didn't cause any real problems. The depth of the shelter has been leveled, and the shelter can now be expanded again. Note: due to the shelter depth exceeding 956 meters, the cost of future expansion increased. What? Insert a large amount of Chinese profanity here, you bastard. Boss? Solomon saw Lin Yi cursing and shrank his neck. He knew this was the boss's way of venting emotions, but now it was best not to provoke him and to keep a distance. Another 10 minutes later, the team emerged from the double-opening heavy door. Chen Yuiu saw the boss's gloomy face and quickly stepped forward to ask, "Is everything okay, boss?" The recent earthquake made her quite uneasy. "It's okay, it's just the shelter is too much of a pit," Lin Yi muttered sullenly. Then, he turned and instructed Solomon. "Assign personnel to the newly occupied space-time fragment for a comprehensive inventory of materials. The progress can be slowed down, but accurate records must be ensured, as tough battles may be ahead." "Yes, boss." Solomon deployed people to the task. Lin Yi went over to his laptop. Now the total area of the shelter is 1.5 million square meters, about 2,250 acres of land area. He decided to double the size of the shelter, expanding it to 3 million square meters. After all, planning extra space in advance is meaningful. This expansion cost a total of 85,080 coins, but there was one issue. 2 fences did not move and remained in their original positions. Damn shelter. Lin Yi spent another 16,000 coins to make the fence wall align with the mist line defense. He also spent 7,000 coins to reinforce the entire fence wall, install a second layer of fencing, and build new watchtowers and lighting facilities. After completing the defense line, it was finally time for the eagerly awaited town construction. Firstly, in the northeast direction, 2 small blocks were constructed, each block having 38 2-story wooden apartment buildings. Each building contains 8 bedrooms, a kitchen, and a shared living room. Each block has a cafeteria that can accommodate 400 people, restrooms, and a common bathroom. Next, in the northwest direction, an industrial zone was built. First paving roads, then constructing several buildings. All buildings in the industrial zone are built with bricks, although more expensive than wood, they are sturdier and fireproof. The first building in the industrial zone is a small meat processing factory, followed by an industrial cold storage that can hold 500 tons of meat. The power infrastructure building is located at one corner of this area, housing 4 bioreactors inside. The bioreactor is about the size of a vehicle, consuming 1,000 units of biological material daily, but providing enough electricity for 1,000 people. After upgrading to level 3, the warehouse was also moved to this area. The upgrade cost 10,000 coins, increasing its capacity to 30,000 square meters. The warehouse is now a 3-story concrete building equipped with a freight elevator, a staff lounge, and an independent cafeteria, effectively making it a logistics center. Then, moving to the southwest direction. The agricultural zone was planned here. Lin Yi first constructed roads and lighting facilities and built 6 small buildings for people's rest. Then came a basic irrigation system to facilitate easier crop irrigation, significantly improving work efficiency. Oriana, responsible for agricultural management, suggested building a tool warehouse here as well. Lin Yi did not oppose, erecting a simple wooden building. This way, farm workers wouldn't have to carry tools back and forth to the warehouse. The military area is located in another corner of this region. It includes a shooting range, barracks, a garage, and an armory, practically a level 2 warehouse. Sylvie is responsible for managing this building, as access to all weapons must go through her. Finally, in the southeast direction, the leisure area is established here. What used to be a small pond with a spring has now become a large lake. A small but dense forest has also appeared, along with benches, a tennis court, and a football field. But the most interesting things are the entertainment center and the Joy House. The former is a casino. The latter houses a women's court. The women's court was proposed by some single men and a group of women who detest physical labor. Finally, the central area. Here, almost nothing has changed. The warehouse and electrical equipment have moved out, replaced by a headquarters building. This headquarters building is designed with the future development of the shelter in mind. Currently, it hosts Chen Yuiu's office, equipped with her personal laptop and a monitoring room. Melanie and other personnel responsible for monitoring also use this office. However, Melanie is still at the open area for now, finding it more convenient to work there. The headquarters building also includes some empty offices, a small cafeteria, and a lounge. This building is constructed with red bricks, having 3 floors, and a basement. Lin Yi put down his laptop and stretched. All the modifications to the shelter cost 225,000 coins, 2/3 of his funds vanished in the blink of an eye. However, as the saying goes, he would rather make money work for him than hoard money. He believes that these investments in the shelter will yield multiple returns in the future. Chapter 98 Who Called Me to Bed? Inside Sanctuary Town. The happy residents smoothly moved into their new accommodations. Chen Yuiu had already assigned the rooms to everyone in advance, so all they had to do was show up and sign for the key. The problem was, there wasn't enough furniture, especially beds. But compared to sleeping in the woods, the residents still preferred sleeping in sleeping bags in their own apartments. The food was quickly delivered to the canteen, and the chefs began preparing dinner. They slaughtered 100 rabbits that day, so everyone was looking forward to a real feast. For the shelter's higher-ups, Lin Yi specially brought out a few bottles of good wine and brandy. Chen Yuiu and Solomon's wife Giselle made their best meat dishes. The dining table was so full of food that it was almost bending, with most of the dishes being meat-centric. So delicious. Lin Yi tried something wrapped in soft dough with meat and vegetables and nearly bit his tongue off. With a mysterious smile, Chen Yuiu said, "This is made by Giselle, her cooking is absolutely amazing." Lin Yi initially wanted to also praise Chen Yuiu's cooking, but seeing her expression, he changed his mind. "I know you've been especially busy lately. How about letting Giselle take over the cooking from now on?" He understood the implied suggestion and agreed. Recently, Chen Yuiu was in charge of every aspect of life at the shelter. This meant she had to solve many problems, coordinate various activities, organize everyone, assign work, and ensure everything went smoothly. It was only right to ease her burden. Feigning as though they hadn't discussed it before, Chen Yuiu asked, "What do you think, Giselle?" "Of course," Giselle happily replied. She had been quite nervous. Despite Chen Yuiu assuring her that the boss would approve, she was still worried. After all, everyone present was close to the boss, and she was only able to be here because of Solomon. She needed to find a way to prove her usefulness, but thankfully, everything went smoothly. "Mom, I'll help you," Giselle's 7-year-old daughter, Erin, said as she tugged at her mother's sleeve. She had become good friends with Chen Yuiu's sister, which also benefited Giselle's son. In the first few days at the shelter, the boy was almost like a wooden stick, but now he's gradually becoming lively. The banquet continued, everyone eating and drinking to their heart's content. Annie was slightly tipsy. "Boss, what's your plan? Are you still planning to trade in Paris?" "No. Paris is beyond saving. I want to complete the shelter's mission, sell as much food as possible, and then get out of this hellhole. Where are you going? I heard, the United Kingdom is quite dangerous. Berlin. Lin Yi didn't hesitate. Berlin is the main intersection of Europe's transportation network, with routes directly to Paris, London, Moscow, and other major European cities. He decided to start in Berlin and then determine where to go next. However, he needed more people, coin, and supplies before that. Natasha, could you help me map out a route? The little Lolita Natasha sat next to Lin Yi, leaning drunkenly against him. She hadn't drunk much, just couldn't hold her liquor. No problem, boss. Leave it to me. Once the plan was set, everyone resumed eating and drinking. As usual, Snow White Katsuya put on a concert for everyone. But this time, she only played the guitar. She was terrible at singing when drunk. The next day, early morning. Boss, wake up. Boss, it's already noon. Why do I always have to be the one to wake him? Annie stood outside Lin Yi's room shouting, but dared not go in, recalling the trouble she faced last time. Melanie walked over, teasing, Humphrey, everyone else is busy, so you're the only one free. Enough, I'm going to find Chen Yuiu. Wait, I'll go with you. I've got something to discuss with her. The two girls quickly ran off. The central area became quiet and empty. That's when a tall and slender figure appeared. She slipped into Lin Yi's room. The way Lin Yi was woken up this time was rather special. He had no strength left, didn't even want to move. Another unusual thing was a warm towel placed over his eyes. When he realized something was off and fully woke up, removing the towel from his face. But the door had already slammed shut. The room was left with only him. What's going on? It's 11 already. They didn't wake me up again? Currently, thanks to Chen Yuiu's efforts, he had developed a habit of needing a wake-up ritual to get up. Lin Yi dressed himself and stepped outside. He looked around, trying to find out who the prankster and Good Samaritan was, but saw no one. Finally, he shrugged and walked to his laptop to check on the situation in Paris. The scene was the same as when he entered the shelter. The red zombies still prepared to ambush him. Occasionally, a lone zombie would wander into the area, but soon it would be grabbed by that stalk of corn. The two would be connected for 10 minutes, after which the regular zombie would turn into a red zombie. During this downtime, Lin Yi opened the personnel management application. After upgrading the program to level 4, it began displaying all the data and skills of the professional residents in the shelter. He could even check their health status, energy reserves, and mood. Sylvie is at level 5 now. What's her new ability? Huh? Tentacles? Ha ha ha. What a strange skill name. As Lin Yi browsed through the list of professionals, the girls had already arrived. In her casual manner, Annie's voice rang out, Oh, boss, you're awake. Boss, you're awake. Sorry, I had to get up early because of something, so I couldn't, wake you. Chen Yuiu said, blushing. Lin Yi was both amused and speechless, actually wondering if there was a mysterious person, huh? Then who? Oh, right, boss, there's something. Chen Yuiu reported what happened in the morning. While moving furniture from the warehouse, there was an accident, and a few people were slightly injured. Then, some people started making trouble. The troublemakers were eventually sent to patrol the perimeter for a whole day. But that's only a temporary fix. It would be better to have a detention room or jail to hold those who disrupt the peace. Lin Yi nodded at this. As the shelter's population continued to grow, restrictions in this area indeed needed to be put in place. Thinking, Lin Yi, while holding his growling stomach, suggested, how about some food? Yeah, you haven't had breakfast yet. Chen Yuiu ran back to her place and brought some leftovers from last night's banquet, but don't eat too much, or you won't have an appetite for lunch. Got it, Vice Boss. Lin Yi smiled as he accepted the meat and vegetables. Chen Yuiu blushed with embarrassment. After eating, Lin Yi took Solomon to the world of space-time fragments. He stood in an alien apartment, looking around. At this point, Solomon suddenly ran over, Boss, we found something interesting. Chapter 99, The House Becomes a Den of Debauchery? World of Space-Time Fragments. Lin Yi followed Solomon to another apartment. The room was empty, but there were obvious signs of long-term habitation. The shape of the room was especially interesting. A normal room is rectangular, but here most are triangular or trapezoidal, like pizza slices. Lin Yi looked at a device. Is that a TV? Yes, boss. I'm 100% sure. It's a regular cathode ray tube TV. Louis, being the top repairman in the shelter, had very solid professional skills. The technology level of this TV is equivalent to the early 1990s on Earth. Oh? Lin Yi observed closely. He found that the TV screen was oval and vertically elongated, as if it were specially designed for playing mobile videos. Anything else interesting? Lin Yi looked around. The furniture here had an old Soviet style, but they were all very old and decrepit. No, boss, there are a few interesting things, but they have no practical value. Louis confidently summed up, I can say, in this world, electronic products are for the rich. There aren't many, and they all seem to be custom-made. Lin Yi was a bit disappointed upon hearing that. After giving a few instructions, he returned to the camp and went to Professor Mark's lab. Old Mark was naturally suspicious, so he insisted on living in a well-defended area. Therefore, his laboratory was located in a military zone, a single-story brick house. The lab was divided into several sections, a storage area, a medical room, a chemistry lab, and a server room housing servers acquired from a pharmaceutical company. Finally, there was an office and a bedroom. Knock knock knock. Come in. Lin Yi opened the door and walked in. At that moment, old Mark was sitting in front of a computer, focused on analyzing a medical condition. Mainly regarding the bizarre symptom Lin Yi described as an anomaly in the brain. When the apocalypse came, Lin Yi woke up naked in a basement. But he couldn't remember why he was there. As for why he felt like there was something in his head, it was mostly just a feeling. Any findings? Lin Yi asked. The professor immediately replied, the eye is searching and analyzing, I'm assisting it, preliminary judgment is, your feeling isn't wrong. The server housed an eye, one of the most powerful eyes in the modern world. Let's do an examination then. All right. Lin Yi nodded, following the professor into the medical room. The medical room had a plethora of complex equipment, including everything recovered from the pharmaceutical company. Old Mark drew some blood from Lin Yi, took a saliva sample, and performed an MRI on his head, along with several other tests. How is it? Lin Yi asked hopefully. Old Mark's brows were furrowed so tightly they were almost twisted. His eyes never left the medical files in his hand. Honestly, I don't know why you haven't turned into a vegetable. The files say that at the start of the apocalypse, your brain had already begun to necrotize. It could last for no more than 52 hours. Yet somehow, you're still alive. Lin Yi was startled to hear this. I think it's the shelter's effect, or maybe I became a professional at that time. It's quite possible. The professor adjusted his glasses. After thinking for a moment, he said earnestly, perhaps you could get an incubator. The rebirth plan document mentions that an incubator plus nanomaterials can repair brain neurons. Where can I find an incubator like that? Well, I know the nearest medical centers are in London and Berlin. They used to produce them in Paris, but later the production company was acquired by Alphabet Incorporated. London? Berlin. Lin Yi chatted with the professor for a while longer before leaving the lab and returning to his room. He planned to read a book. Actually, to fall asleep with the book on his face. Knock knock knock, there was a knock on the door. Come in. It's me, boss. Chen Yui walked in. She looked worried. I haven't seen you all day. I was a bit anxious. Then I ran into the professor. He said you went to see him about an illness. Don't worry, I'm tough. Lin Yi laughed as he got up from the bed and walked over to Chen Yui. Boss, I will always support you. Chen Yui beamed. Suddenly, in one fluid motion, Lin Yi picked Chen Yui up horizontally. For a professional with a power value as high as 16, a girl of this body type was as light as a feather. The girl realized the boss's intent and was a bit shy. Boss. Dinner will be ready in half an hour. Then let's get moving and work up an appetite first. Lin Yi grinned, then carefully placed her on the bed. Meanwhile, Annie was so hungry her stomach was growling, loudly complaining, Boss. We're starving out here. Chen Yui? How are you not embarrassed? Her stomach was empty and sounded like a bellowing horse. Chen Yui had been in there comforting the boss for over an hour and a half. No matter how loud Annie shouted, the people inside seemed to hear nothing. After all, she was the one who insisted on soundproofing the boss's room, and Lin Yi obliged. Annie shouted for another 5 minutes, but there was no response. As hungry as a bear just coming out of hibernation, she started banging on the bedroom window. She tried peeking through the curtains, but couldn't see anything. Fortunately, she eventually achieved her goal. Seeing the boss and Chen Yui, Annie dejectedly protested, Boss. We're all outside, waiting with empty stomachs for you. Sorry, my fault. Next time, don't wait for me. I really can't come out right away. Lin Yi tried hard not to burst out laughing. Annie's hangry tantrum looked too funny. You can't do this. You're our boss. Chen Yui, you're at fault too. You can't tempt the boss right before dinner. You're not a child, you know men only think about that one thing. You knew dinner was coming up, yet you intentionally walked into that den of vice. Wait, since when did my room become a den of vice? Lin Yi asked in surprise. Annie was left speechless by the question. Chen Yui turned betrayed with embarrassment, standing silently by the side. She wasn't a child, and when it was just her and Lin Yi, she could really let loose. But any negative comments about that aspect of her, especially from a third party, made her blush and wish she could dig a hole to hide in. After joking around for a while, they teased the boss and Chen Yui, then everyone sat down to dinner. Lin Yi ordered that at least 100 rabbits be slaughtered every day. The butchers had prepared the daily quota of rabbit meat. Fragrant fried rabbit steaks, special recipe rabbit legs, and stewed rabbit filling the long table. Rosemary, scavenged from an abandoned supermarket, was sprinkled over the rabbit meat. The rabbit steak on Lin Yi's plate was obviously the handiwork of Chen Yui. He sliced off a piece of rabbit meat and put it in his mouth, feeling the tender texture melt on his tongue. Chapter 100, Did he sleep with her? Rabbit meat is both delicious and nutritious, and once the residents of the shelter tasted it, they couldn't stop. Rabbit meat was plentiful, so everyone could eat their fill. Lin Yi took a bite of roast rabbit leg and asked, "How's the situation outside?" Earlier today, a group of survivors walked into an ambush, none survived. Melanie swallowed a spoonful of stew, indifferent to human casualties. Now, the entire city was practically in chaos. People kept trying to break out of Paris, and people kept dying, bitten by zombies. Many areas had even turned into a sea of fire. She had seen so much on the laptop screen that she eventually became numb and unfeeling. Have the numbers of those red-haired zombies decreased? About 6 died, but the dead survivors were converted, replenishing the numbers, so. Lin Yi, upon hearing this, felt a headache coming on. If more and more red-haired zombies gathered around, then moving to other areas would become very difficult for him. Unless he came up with something clever. Lin Yi had a sudden idea and turned to Louis. "Can you make a thermite grenade? You want to burn the place to ashes?" The old mechanic asked in surprise, immediately grasping his boss's intention. If they burned the corn stalks thoroughly, then it couldn't produce any new red-haired zombies. As long as the birth rate was controlled, they could clear a bloody path to get out of there. This plan was quite good. All eyes were on Louis. "I can make it," Louis scratched his head, "but it will surely cause a big fire." "It doesn't matter, all the survivors in this area have turned into zombies anyway, so get on it." "Understood, boss," Louis replied, but with an expression of hesitation and stumbling over his words. Lin Yi frowned and asked humorously, "Do you have some personal matter you want to talk to me about?" Louis was very embarrassed. He knew it was personal, yet it was spoken in public. However, the old mechanic had a pretty thick skin, and quickly recovered. "Little Red from the women's house hopes I can get some rest time for the staff." "Huh?" Lin Yi was somewhat confused. Chen Yui, a bit embarrassed, said, The employees at the women's house complain there are just too many clients." "Are there really that many people going?" "Almost all the bachelors head straight there and refuse to leave," Louis grinned. The boss eyed Louis playfully, "Including you, you old lech." Hee. "Boss, I'm not that old yet. I have needs too, you know. There's not much wine here, not much fun, and we're under a lot of pressure, so." As Louis spoke, he noticed most people present gave him accusing looks. He tried to defend himself, but the more he spoke, the more he couldn't continue. Nevertheless, he still had to go. "Hey, I get it, but you have to let the girls catch their breath, don't you?" Lin Yi thought for a moment and continued, "Chen Yui, set a number for them, beyond which they can choose not to entertain. Also, the women's house will only be open for business at night." "Okay." Lin Yi nodded and noticed 2 people with very odd expressions. "What's up with those 2? Xiaoxuan turned pale as the boss noticed him, while the dark-skinned girl Melanie deliberately avoided looking at him. "Boss, you won't believe this. Last night everyone got drunk, and Melanie actually slept with Guy." Annie was so excited she flailed her arms. The next morning she was still in a daze. "Huh? Why am I here? Why am I not wearing clothes?" "Xiaoxuan? Annie!" Melanie shouted angrily. Anna reached out and gave the big-mouthed girl a solid whack on the back of her head. She hit hard enough that everyone at the table heard it. "Xiaoxuan, that's really not cool. I mean, hormones are at play, and you drank, but I remember you didn't drink much, right?" But Melanie was completely trashed. A drunk girl doesn't know what she's doing. Taking advantage of her is putting it lightly. "But Xiaoxuan started to explain. But seeing everyone's accusatory looks, he thought it was better not to say anything. Why though? In fact, last night it was Melanie who insisted on dragging him back to her place. "I know I was wrong, boss." In the end, Xiaoxuan silently shouldered the blame alone. However, no one delved deeper into the matter because everyone knew they were fond of each other. The boss looked around at the people sitting at the table. "Anything else happen?" Louis got so sloshed that he mistook Melanie for one of the women at the house and tried to hit on her. ended up getting slapped. Ha ha ha. Annie started gossiping again. But this time she didn't get hit because even Anna couldn't help but laugh when she heard about Louis. The boss looked at the black girl, Melanie. This somewhat shy black girl was quietly eating her meat, enjoying the delicious food with a happy face. She didn't look particularly outstanding, appeared a bit dull and not very sharp, but she was kind-hearted and honest. If anyone bothers you, just hit them, or shout for help. I'm allowing you to do that. Thank you, boss. Melanie smiled happily. Lin Yi then pointed at Louis, and you old lech, I know you were sloshed, but you'd better know your place, and control yourself. Sorry, boss. Louis said awkwardly, lowering his head. He had indeed drunk too much. Primarily, if car airbags were as big as hers, people would definitely be willing to crash. But he wouldn't dare say that. By the time lunch was halfway, everyone continued their discussion. Regarding the future development of the shelter, everyone agreed that security must be strengthened. Maintain order internally and scout for external threats, so that they can be alert when zombies attack from the mist. Lin Yi was contemplating whether to build a school and a daycare center. This way, parents could work better, and children would be happier. After the meal, everyone went their separate ways. Chen Yuiu, Solomon's wife, cleaned up the mess and washed the dishes. Melanie decided to work on her laptop for a while longer before washing up. Lin Yi lay comfortably in a hammock, closing his eyes, enjoying a moment of peace. Of course, this peace did not last long. Half an hour later, he heard music in the distance. The sound was faint, but it aroused his curiosity, so he decided to check it out. He followed the sound to the lakeside. At that moment, Katsuya was performing on a small stage. This seemingly delicate girl was playing the guitar and singing an emotional song in French. Beside her stood two girls, one playing a violin, the other an electric guitar. Katsuya sang quite beautifully, attracting quite an audience, with at least 100 people. There were no empty seats, so Lin Yi sat on the grass, slightly away from the other audience members, listening quietly. Not thinking about the worries, not thinking about how much work was left, just fully enjoying the music. A few minutes later, the song ended. Lin Yi stood up, about to leave when an elderly couple, amidst the applause from the audience, took the stage. Someone helped them play the background music, and they began to sing. Surprisingly, it was rock and roll. Lin Yi didn't snap out of his musical trance until midnight, then he got up and went home. He showered and quickly got into bed and fell asleep. The next day, he had a battle to fight. Chapter 101, That's what they all say when they're blown up shelter. Lin Yi woke up from sleep and, after breakfast, plunged into intense work. His first decision was to check on the rabbit population. Amazing. The shelter's rabbits were reproducing at an astonishing rate, with 400 new rabbits each day, but the butchers could barely handle 100 of them. Therefore, he temporarily decided not to expand the rabbit breeding scale. Next, Lin Yi went to check the meat processing plant. The workers here had already developed an efficient assembly line workflow. The first step was managed by 2 workers responsible for skinning, gutting, and bleeding. Then, some rabbit carcasses were sent to the cold storage for preservation, while the rest were sent to the butcher's table, where they were cut into rabbit legs, rabbit chops, and small pieces of abdominal meat. The shelter's rabbits were much larger than those on Earth, with an average weight of about 20 pounds, and around 17 pounds of that was edible meat, so processing them was laborious. After the rabbit carcasses were cut, the meat was categorized and sent to the cold storage for refrigeration. Like the cellar, the meat could be preserved indefinitely there. Finally, some parts of the rabbit corpses, like viscera and bones, remained, which were hard to consume. Everyone in the shelter had gone hungry before and couldn't bear to waste anything edible. Lin Yi came up with an idea and established a recycling mechanism. In the process, the clean viscera and bones were packaged and placed in the refrigerator. If the opportunity arose, he would distribute these items to the starving children for free. After leaving the processing area, Lin Yi went to the community dining hall. Each small block had its own dining hall, accommodating 400 people, in a buffet style. In Lin Yi's opinion, only well-fed and happy workers could engage in their work effectively. So he was never stingy when it came to providing food. The residents, who were hungry a week ago, were very grateful. But it goes without saying that people easily forget hard days and gradually adapt to a good present, so their gratitude would eventually wane. However, Lin Yi never expected the people to worship him, he just wanted outstanding and loyal employees. The dining hall was a bit simple, with basic furniture, and the floor and walls were brick-built. The chandeliers for lighting were scavenged from apartments in the real world, although they looked somewhat amusing, they sufficed. The chefs were authorized to use the cold storage and cellar, so they didn't have to transport food everywhere, they only needed to issue a command in their minds, and meat or potatoes would appear before them. Speaking of chefs, The majority of the kitchen staff lacked professional cooking experience, they were all homemakers before. During his inspection, Lin Yi listed down the problems he identified, ready to make improvements. Then, he moved towards the garage. The shelter currently had 4 civilian vehicles and 3 military jeeps, 2 of which were used for combat and 1 armored vehicle for officers. The other 3 jeeps were under maintenance. Additionally, the shelter had several motorcycles, but most were broken or had been dismantled. Lin Yi circled a military jeep that now only had its chassis, shouting loudly. "Old rascal, where are you?" "Right here, boss." Lin Yi followed Louis's voice and found him focused on welding something. "What are you working on?" "Sorry, boss, I'm making a bomb with a timer, it will be ready in an hour." Louis was deeply focused, sweating profusely. Lin Yi nodded and turned towards the barracks. The shelter had 2 barracks. Each barrack could accommodate 40 people, but since there were only 53 soldiers, and they took turns guarding the perimeter of the shelter, the barracks were rarely used. At the shooting range, Solomon was teaching his soldiers how to accurately hit their targets. Even those who could transform and use magic, and the archers, had to undergo training. The soldiers started by learning to use handguns, gradually progressing to submachine guns and shotguns, with the best being equipped with assault rifles. Solomon didn't ignore close-quarters combat training, which was particularly important for the beastmen. They grew up in the comfortable Western environment and didn't know what real combat was. Perhaps an occasional drunkard hit his old wife. They also engaged in significant strength training. This was a paradox of the system. A boxer with a power value of 15 could easily defeat a regular person with a power value of 25 or even 30. The system would alter people's skeletal and muscular structure based on their attributes. But if someone didn't exercise and lazed around all day, the strength they could exert would be at most 18%. Professor Mark, after extensive research on system users in the Louvre and the shelter, concluded this precisely. Agility attribute would also affect a person's muscle nature, as well as their nervous system and sensory organs. This attribute could enhance flexibility, speed, reaction time, and even increase vision and scent. Endurance attribute could expand the lungs, improve blood circulation, and oxygen supply. Life value attribute would generally make a person stronger, bolster the immune system, accelerate healing speed, improve the resistance of the internal organs to damage, and make bones more resilient. As for the magic attribute, everyone knew it affected the strength of magic skills and magic power, but no one knew specifically how it worked. After wandering in the shelter for a while longer, Lin Yi returned to his laptop. After capturing the space-time fragment, the shelter earned 2,000 experience points, reaching level 11. The variety of items in the store increased. After searching for half an hour, Lin Yi finally discovered an intriguing new item. Portable camera, a badge that can be pinned to clothing. Depending on the number of laptops and badges, it can simultaneously observe 2 or more people. Price, 500 coins. Lin Yi bought 3 badges, a few walkie-talkies, and a bunch of headsets. Then he asked Melanie, who was beside him, "Did you find someone to operate the camera?" "I found only one girl, she's very patient and attentive, the others are no good." The black girl recalled those peculiar candidates with an expression of helplessness. Operating a camera involved the owner's security and was arguably the strictest position in the shelter. Lin Yi stroked his chin, suddenly thought of something, and said, "It doesn't necessarily have to be a girl." "Boss, I don't quite understand. If someone has skills in this area, I don't care about their age or gender. This is a very important job. Once we operate in Paris." "You know what I mean, right?" Melanie didn't really understand what the boss meant, but she nodded anyway. 15 minutes later, a tired Louis came running over. He was dragging a huge canister, with an electronic device welded onto it. When Lin Yi saw Louis, he quickly stopped him, shouting, "Hey, hey, hey, is that a bomb?" Amateur bomber Louis froze in place. After a moment, he grinned and replied, "Yeah, but don't worry. It's only going to explode when I press this button." "That's what every damned person who's been blown up says." Lin Yi shouted angrily. Chapter 102, Biological Bomb Sanctuary Town. Lin Yi picked up the bomb, staring intently at old Louis. "So I just press this button?" "That's right." Without another word, Lin Yi teleported to Paris. As soon as he arrived in the real world, he decisively pressed the detonation button. Then, he fiercely hurled the container filled with explosives towards the cornstalk. Upon seeing someone appear, the red zombies instantly grew agitated, roaring as they closed in on him. Lin Yi activated the teleport again, disappearing just as the zombies reached out to grab him. The bomb passed through the window, landing accurately inside the building. The red zombies guarding the cornstalk glanced at it briefly, but after realizing the container was not a living being, they immediately lost interest. Beep beep beep. The timer hit 0, and the bomb exploded, sending a deafening roar throughout the area. The explosion's power shattered the 5-story building into fragments, kicking up massive dust clouds. Next, a vortex of high-temperature flames formed, melting the steel into molten iron at 1,000-degree heat, causing the concrete structure to collapse like a sand sculpture. Lin Yi watched the screen's display, utterly shocked. Louis, what is this thing? Did you make a nuclear bomb or what? Maybe the mix was a bit aggressive. Amateur demolitionist Louis scratched the back of his head awkwardly. What did you put in the bomb? Lin Yi was somewhat frightened. If this thing had exploded prematurely, he might have ended up as a smear on the road. I mixed gasoline and biofuel together. Louis carefully avoided Lin Yi's gaze, trying to appear relaxed. Which type of biofuel? The bioreactor processes biological matter into biofuel. I poured out a little for an experiment and found it extremely flammable and explosive. Louis bowed his head, looking a bit guilty. Then I calculated the mixture ratio of gasoline and biofuel to make that. Can you make more? Lin Yi asked after pondering for a moment, his eyes gleaming. Sure. But I need to build you an underground bunker, to prevent the entire town getting blown up in case something goes wrong. That couldn't be better. Louis laughed, instantly cheerful. Lin Yi sat back at the laptop, starting to examine the situation outside. He looked at the steel turned into molten iron and asked, is it normal for it to melt like that? Of course it's normal. Louis confidently replied. Lin Yi's eye twitched, continuing to ask, is it normal for nearby buildings to turn into sand too? That's right, it's actually a good thing. This way the fire won't spread to the entire block. Makes sense, you're a damn genius. Thanks, boss. The fire burned for only an hour, but the blaze was extremely fierce, severely damaging or turning nearby buildings into ruins. Trees nearby were instantly burned to ashes, asphalt melted into lava. Given the situation, leaving the shelter was not an option, so everyone relaxed a bit before lunch. Soon after, lunch was prepared. Melanie recorded the explosion of the building and everything around melted and destroyed by the fire. Everyone watched the video gleefully. Currently, the shelter urgently needs furniture, bedding, and household appliances. Buying them from stores is unaffordable. The best solution is scavenging apartment buildings. Luckily their first stop is Sacred Heart Cathedral, with many apartment buildings to scavenge along the way. Solomon, get the team ready after lunch. During the scavenging, grab anything not nailed down. Understood, boss. Natasha, as the chief urban planner, I want you to plan a bunker for Louis. He'll explain everything to you. Any problem? No problem, boss. The little girl said as she devoured a piece of cured meat sauce. An hour later, Melanie spent 10 minutes carefully inspecting the surrounding of the explosion area. Once everything was safe, Lin Yi left the shelter. He had no car available, but even if he did, driving in the city was asking for trouble. Interestingly, after the corn stalk was destroyed, all the red zombies in the area went out of control. Initially, they stood still. But soon, they started running wild, smashing anything in sight, even fighting amongst each other. About an hour later, all the red zombies fell to the ground, showing no signs of movement. The pavement remained scorching, the air burned his lungs. Lin Yi encountered no trouble for the first few kilometers ahead but soon began to encounter small groups of zombies. He teleported to Solomon. The two quickly fought their way into a 9-story apartment building that seemed relatively intact. Then they returned to the shelter. Lin Yi handed Solomon a portable camera. Solomon took the metal badge, examining it closely and asked, "Boss, what is this?" "Portable camera, let's give it a try." "Melanie, fetch that girl you spotted to operate the camera." Melanie nodded and ran off. 4 minutes later, Melanie returned with a slender girl who looked about 18 years old. "This is Nika," Melanie introduced, pointing at the confident young girl. Lin Yi nodded and waved. A notice appeared before the girl. "You have been assigned a new job, camera operator. As a camera operator, you will have the right to use the camera application, but you must get the boss's permission before using it." Nika was slightly puzzled. After reading she laughed. "I'm Nika, I assure you, I can handle this job." The girl smiled confidently. Nika was slightly shorter than Melanie, around 1.6 meters, extremely thin due to hunger, but her eyes sparkled with confidence and determination. "Okay, go sit by the computer. Melanie will explain the basics." Lin Yi nodded and waved. A laptop appeared beside Melanie's computer. The computer screen had only the camera program installed, nothing else. "Now set the computer to work with the portable camera," Lin Yi instructed Nika. Nika clicked on the signal source icon. A small menu popped up. The signal source was shown as Solomon. Seeing this, Lin Yi nodded, taking out a box filled with walkie-talkies and headphones. He handed one set to Nika. Then, He took Solomon back to the apartment. "Solomon, Nico will be responsible for monitoring your squad. Set half of the walkie-talkies to my channel, and the other half to your channel." In this way, he could know the warrior's situation and effectively issue commands. And Solomon could inform Nico of danger and report the situation. After giving all the orders, Lin Yi and Solomon dispersed, started cleaning up on their own. After all, there's no such thing as too many experience points. 10 minutes later. "Boss, I've searched the floors. There's a burly zombie in an apartment on the left of the 7th floor. It's alone, but seems to be evolving. Sounds like a chance to score some loot and easily earn experience points." Lin Yi chuckled lightly, then charged towards the 7th floor. Chapter 103, Toilet Plunderer inside the apartment. After successfully slicing off the head of the 6th zombie, Lin Yi slowly arrived at the 7th floor. He stopped at the apartment door. The once sturdy iron door had now become a twisted metal sheet. "Target is near the window, move forward and then to the left," Melanie's voice came through the headset. Lin Yi drew out a level 3 handgun and walked into the room. The window in the room had intestines hanging halfway down it, with a massive zombie curled up underneath. Its body was undergoing visible changes. A bony protrusion emerged from its spine, bone spikes sprouted from its head, its legs grew sturdy, and blue veins pulsed amid decaying flesh. Luckily, this zombie's chest rose only once every 7 seconds, seemingly unresponsive to external distractions. "I'll be gentle, don't worry," Lin Yi whispered, slowly approaching the zombie. He saw its face elongating bit by bit, teeth turning into long fangs. No longer hesitating, he drew out the black one-handed sword and thrust it sharply into the mutant zombie's skull. The tip met some resistance, but the bone was eventually pierced through. The bulk of the zombie twitched a few times before dying. "You killed a level 2 mutant zombie, gained 50 experience points, congratulations, you have reached level 8, gained 2 attribute points, nice. Add both points to power." Currently, his basic power was 18 points, with the boots providing a +4 boost, totaling 22 points in power. He transported the zombie's corpse to the bottomless pit in the shelter, then picked up the dropped reward egg. A blue reward egg. Lin Yi's eyes brightened, and he put it away. Half an hour later, the group arrived at a large apartment building. Lin Yi still acted independently. Meanwhile, Solomon divided the team into 2 squads, each composed of 11 people. Their tactics were straightforward. The Beastman squad relied on their immunity to the first-level virus to take on melee tasks, while other warriors coordinated support from the perimeter. Once zombies inside an apartment were cleared out, some warriors would stay behind to scavenge for supplies, while others continued to the next apartment to resume clearing. Due to rarely encountering more than 3 zombies per apartment, the clearing process proceeded rapidly. This apartment building had 10 floors. The apartment building had 10 floors, 4 rooms per floor. The warriors cleared a total of 40 units and acquired plenty of furniture and other usable items. After scavenging was complete, the group left the apartment building in an orderly fashion. The Beastman squad continued to lead the team, dispersing the zombie horde gathered at the exit. The warriors behind quickly dispatched the nearest group of zombies. Typically 2 to 3 could easily handle one zombie. This strategy was faster and safer. Meanwhile, the Beastmen lured zombie swarms behind them, dispersing the numbers as much as possible. All zombies were soon eliminated one by one. Group after group, the process required no intervention from Lin Yi or Solomon themselves. Lin Yi nodded in approval. "Well done. We've been training for this tactic for a while now." Solomon was genuinely uplifted by the boss's praise. Yet he remained earnest, though not perfect. With accumulated experience, they'll become increasingly proficient. Lin Yi was satisfied, tossing 23 zombie corpses into the bottomless pit and collecting the spoils. Everyone was ready to go, and they continued moving forward. With information relayed by the girls monitoring the surroundings, the warriors could accurately grasp the position and number of zombies, while the squad leader issued commands via walkie-talkie. The clearing task became exceedingly easy. Slay zombies on sight, hack zombies when encountered. Most warriors treated this action as a training opportunity, especially since they all wore vaccine bracelets, effectively granting them an extra life. In terms of scavenging, some apartments were utterly stripped bare. If feasible, the warriors would even dismantle window frames. Whenever possible, they would take toilets and bathtubs because each toilet or bathtub saved the boss some coins. Simply put, this wasn't merely a shelter army anymore, but a band of plunderers crazily snatching up toilets. 3 hours later, including zombies inside and outside the apartment building, they'd killed a total of 140. Aside from a few who sustained minor injuries and used a vaccine, the operation was mostly successful. The group collectively secured 50 reward eggs. Lucky Annie opened the eggs and received 20 vaccines, several sets of level 1 armor, and other small items. Most importantly, not a single egg was empty. Lin Yi felt rather frustrated about this. Last time, when he opened reward eggs himself, he opened 4 empty ones in a row. The sky was still bright, so Lin Yi took the squad, preparing to head to the next apartment building. After dealing with those idling zombies around the building, the squad was ready to enter the first entrance. But Lin Yi suddenly changed his mind. Melanie, Nika, let Solomon stand in the middle of the building, so you can survey the situation. I have a hunch about this place. Okay, boss. Melanie, Nika, and Solomon responded in unison, then quickly took action. A minute later, Lin Yi received some intriguing information. On the other side of the building, there seemed to be a small survivor camp, with a total of 52 people. They lived on the second floor, using the upper floors for storage and living space. Apart from these people, there were only a few zombies that had wandered in from the entrance. The people in the camp, seeing this group of heavily armed strangers, were visibly nervous and uneasy. Thus, they held their breath, trying to act as if nothing was amiss. According to Melanie's observation, the camp leader was currently indulging himself with 4 women. Lin Yi grinned. This was clearly not his business. He led the squad to start clearing zombies around the area. Then they bypassed this apartment and entered the building next door to begin scavenging work. Anything that could be unscrewed or moved was cleared out. Leaving the apartment, everyone was somewhat hungry. After battling for a full 4 hours, many warriors' stomachs began to growl. Furniture, appliances, and other items still needed to be gathered. The task had to be completed. Other camps in the vicinity were observing, making it inconvenient to teleport personnel back to the shelter. Thus, Lin Yi simply handed out some food to the soldiers, letting them eat while on the move. Then, a truly amusing scene unfolded. 20-something fully armed warriors, holding weapons in one hand, roasted rabbit on skewers in the other. Their tactical goggles even had cumin powder stuck on them. Lin Yi led the 22-member squad, walking, eating roasted rabbit skewers, and strolling past the building. Meanwhile, many people detailed the events unfolding to their respective survivor camps. No matter what, a squad that seemed hard to provoke indeed drew much attention. People crowded at windows, peering at every step this team took. Chapter 104, The Boss is a Celestial? Paris, on the streets. Lin Yi led the team, strutting down the street. But he wasn't afraid. He didn't want to reveal his cards, but he wasn't afraid to show his strength. Suddenly, hurried footsteps could be heard. A frail man burst out from an apartment building, shouting loudly, "Stop! I beg you!" Instantly, all the dormant zombies in the area reacted to his voice. More than 40 decaying figures surged from all directions. Combat was imminent. A warrior cursed, "What an idiot! Everyone, prepare to fight. Groups of 3, find your targets. Don't run too far, stay within 15 meters of the boss." Solomon stood beside Lin Yi, loudly commanding. Meters was not an arbitrary distance, it was Lin Yi's teleportation range. If something unexpected happened, he could teleport the warriors elsewhere to rescue him. If things got extremely dangerous, he could teleport everyone back at once. Combat broke out quickly. Fighting in the open outdoors was easy. The space was ample, with many obstacles and covers. Dealing with these scattered zombies was a breeze. Xiaoxuan seized this opportunity to show his skills. His archery was remarkably accurate, killing 15 zombies in just 20 seconds. 10 minutes later, all zombies were down, their bodies collected, soldiers regrouped, and began to replenish their physical strength. A warrior asked, "Boss, why do we only clear the buildings on the left side of the road?" "Because we are heading to the city center, not clearing the entire street. After clearing another apartment building, we'll have enough furniture and appliances needed back home." At this moment, the leader of the apartment camp slowly walked out of the building, surrounded by 4 bodyguards. The frail man who had rushed out earlier and shouted at them was among them. "Good day, my friends, please forgive my people for troubling you so much." This leader wore a set of second-level armor, his hair slicked back, his face holding a fake smile. However, his rotting teeth made his smile particularly glaring. Lin Yi impatiently asked, "What do you want?" "You're an Easterner? That's uncommon. My people caused trouble, I want to apologize for him." The rotten-toothed leader continued to smile, with a scent of cologne mixed with halitosis wafting from him. Lin Yi had no patience for the man in front of him or his hypocritical attitude. He coldly retorted, "I don't care about your apology, nor your people, we're in a hurry. It's getting late, stay with us, we'll provide food for you, and there will be women to accompany you at night. I'll give you 10 seconds to speak your mind, or get lost, 5 seconds left." "Sorry, I'm not one to directly ask for help. But here, first are the red zombies, and then. So you must have a good camp, please take us with you. Warning. Mental attack, Someone is trying to implant the following suggestion: take him and his people to your camp and care for him. Due to your high level, the attack failed. Mental control, huh? Interesting. Lin Yi chuckled softly. Suddenly his beloved third-level handgun appeared in his hand. He moved swiftly, and under the horrified gaze of the rotten-toothed leader, he pulled the trigger. Bam! A gunshot rang out. The leader's head burst open like a watermelon, brain matter splattered onto those nearby. At the same time, the frail man suddenly screamed, clutching his head as if something was gnawing on his brain. The 4 bodyguards of the rotten-toothed leader also began to scream in agony, one even bleeding from his eyes. About 15 seconds later, these people knelt to the ground, letting out a harrowing wail. Melanie's voice came through the earpiece. Boss. Many people in their camp have gone insane. The entire camp is chaotic now. Lin Yi narrowed his eyes, quickly understanding. The rotten-toothed leader had clearly used mental skills to control part of the camp. Now that he's dead, the control has vanished, the backlash causing unbearable pain to those controlled. As expected, Melanie soon reported, people have rebelled. The 2 professionals left in the camp were surrounded and knocked to the ground by the angry people. No painful screams from the civilians? No, the painful screams only came from the professionals. The civilians beat the professionals to death. It was an extremely violent and bloody scene. Send someone to call Chen Yu. After Lin Yi finished speaking, he turned to look at the 5 professional-looking men in front of him. So, how should I deal with you? At this moment, the frail man was still screaming, pounding the ground with his fists. The other men just stared blankly at Lin Yi, showing no response to his words. Clearly, the remnants of being controlled hadn't waned. Lin Yi decided to return to the shelter. He wanted to see with his own eyes what had happened in the camp. On the surveillance screen, the camp seemed to be enveloped in unbearable sorrow. Some were crying, some were destroying the leader's private quarters, and some chose to commit suicide. No one knew what these people had gone through under the leader's rule to have such reactions. If he said he wasn't curious, that would certainly be a lie. 10 minutes later, Lin Yi returned to the real world. Solomon was still interrogating the 5 men tied up, but some results had emerged. Turns out, the rotten-toothed leader's name was Daniel. He was once the second in command of the camp. But he had unbelievable luck, stealing some unnoticed survivor coins. He found a vending machine and purchased a unique skill. Let me guess. He used this skill to first get rid of some people, then the former leader, and finally took over the whole camp, right? Lin Yi interrupted Solomon's report, glancing toward the direction of the survivor camp. How? How did you know? Solomon's eyes widened, looking at his boss, shock in his heart as if he were looking at a deity. Lin Yi apathetically said, continue. Solomon took a deep breath and continued speaking. Initially, several deputies of the original camp leader all disappeared one after another. Then there were numerous complaints about the leader. Then a rebellion occurred. Almost all of the camp's warriors sided with the rebels. They finally judged the leader with some inexplicable charges, and then sentenced him to feed him to the zombies. Afterwards, Daniel did not claim to be the new leader. Instead, he said he was the leader's capable assistant, so he was partly responsible for what happened. Lin Yi lightly added, but everyone insisted he should be the new leader of the camp? Yes. Solomon clapped his hands, filled with admiration for Lin Yi, and suddenly felt a cold fear. How does the boss know everything? Chapter 105, Nurse Martha Paris, on the streets. Lin Yi sighed, this is really complicated. However, he knew in his heart that the things to come were still foreseeable. After Daniel became the new leader, he began to actively expand, sending people to kill zombies and take over other camps. Due to his skills, he could only control those below level 5, so whenever someone was about to reach level 5, they would mysteriously die. He must have been collecting coins while in power and hoping to find another vending machine, right? Solomon was now completely in awe of his boss, and he smiled wryly. Yes, boss, he has always done that during his reign. Did he do anything? I mean, anything outrageous that made people indignant and outraged? Lin Yi was always very curious about this. When Solomon heard the question, he seemed to recall some unpleasant scenes. His face immediately took on an expression as if he had eaten something disgusting. Daniel likes watching male-on-male interaction, just purely likes watching, so. Alright, let's stop the chit-chat. Lin Yi almost threw up on the spot and quickly intervened. Let's go to this camp, quickly sort this out, and then head back to the shelter for dinner. The team entered the camp without much effort. But due to the small space of the camp, all the residents were forced into the yard behind the building. After listening to the survivors' account, the boss offered them the standard conditions for joining the shelter. Except for 3 people. According to most survivors, these 3 had always caused trouble, so they were quietly dealt with. In the end, 44 people signed contracts and were sent to the shelter after they packed their personal belongings. Solomon and his team also returned to the shelter to ensure these newcomers wouldn't do anything foolish. After all, having experienced the chaotic times before, they might have some mental issues in the short term. Not bad. Lin Yi stood in the camp's treasure room, looking very pleased. There was a batch of ordinary weapons and system weapons here. More than 10 pistols, dozens of baseball bats, 11 level 2 swords, and 6 sets of level 1 armor, and even 44 vaccine bracelets. Most importantly, Lin Yi found a huge pile of coins in the corner of the room. After the coins were sent to the shelter, the system showed that the shelter's coin reserve had increased by more than 112,000. 112,000 coins. For such a small camp, this was an astonishing amount. There was hardly any furniture in the camp, all smashed into firewood to make space, except for the camp leader. All survivors slept in sleeping bags. The camp had plenty of food, including several tons of canned meat, pasta, and other storable staples. Even so, many residents in the camp were still starving before. Shelter mission progress, 733 out of 1,000 people. Lin Yi closed the mission progress notification window, pondering that if they continued, this mission would be completed. They might even recruit more people than needed. This mission was a piece of cake. In the shelter, the newcomers were all handed over to Regina. Regina is a leader of the feminist camp, the big sister of 300 girls. She is in charge of basic errands, and now she can be said to be Chen Yui's assistant. Regina had the newcomers wash up and then took them to the canteen. If they hadn't seen hundreds of people eating dinner, the newcomers might have thought this was some kind of trap, even a meticulously planned scam. Since the apocalypse began, they hadn't seen so much fresh and delicious food. But here, even what the common people ate was 100 times better than what the previous camp leader ate. After they had eaten, Regina assigned accommodations for each person. Although there was no furniture in the rooms, she assured everyone that the issue would be resolved the next day. Even with keys to the new apartments in hand, the newcomers still couldn't believe it was all real. Since they signed the contract, they all knew who was the boss of the shelter. During the night rest, this group of acquaintances gathered together, whispered to each other. In the conversation, besides an extremely profound understanding of the phrase misfortune and fortune are interdependent, it was gratitude and admiration for the shelter's owner. Some even began to lose faith in gods, believing instead in. At the dinner table, Annie was complaining while stuffing roast rabbit meat into her mouth. "Boss. You made us wait so long again, we're starving. But it was worth it, we got more than 100,000 coins. I think it's time to make this place more comfortable." Lin Yi calmly replied, leisurely finishing his bowl of meat soup. Martha, like the boss, was also drinking soup. "I really like the atmosphere now." Martha, a Russian girl, with a petite frame, her blonde hair casually draped over her shoulders, like a cheerful Barbie doll. Unlike the other girls, her parents raised her to be a qualified wife from a young age. After coming to the shelter, she began to learn independence and confidence, changing more and more every day. The only constant was that little bit of unworthy desire for Lin Yi. In short, she always wanted to do something for the boss, which also guided her direction of effort. When she learned that Lin Yi would visit old Mark's lab now and then to check on his condition, Martha decided to become a nurse. Professor Mark's lab also serves as a clinic for injured or sick residents. He needed an assistant, so the professor started training Martha. The girl is very disciplined and learns quickly. She hopes to heal the boss one day and check his body. Therefore, in his training manual, there is a copy of Lin Yi's medical report, with key areas circled in red. Thinking about this, Martha secretly glanced at Lin Yi's muscular build beneath his t-shirt, which made her blush immediately. Her ladle fell into the soup, splattering soup on the front of her nurse's uniform. "More comfortable?" Annie's eyes lit up, and she excitedly asked, "Like, letting us all have our own bathrooms?" "Hee, I don't think that's necessary, we're already so close, almost like a family," Martha said with a smile. "If we shower with others, we'll get to know them better." Her fingers unconsciously fiddled with the buttons on her nurse's uniform, and a button suddenly popped off. How was Lin Yi supposed to respond to this? He could only continue eating silently, ignoring the noise around him, contemplating his future plans. He needed soldiers, as many as possible. This way, when the shelter was invaded next time, there would be no worries about defense issues. But if he had more soldiers, it would be harder to control them all, and it's possible some might betray him. Currently, he doesn't have to worry too much about the warriors in the shelter, since their families live here. But if he continues to recruit only those with families, it will be hard to recruit a few hundred more soldiers. The apocalypse is chaotic, and post-apocalyptic Paris is even more chaotic now. Outside, there are many small camps and many solitary people with psychological trauma. Chapter 106, Unique Skill Book inside the shelter. Lin Yi stuffed the grilled meat into his mouth. If he wants to recruit a large number of soldiers, he must first recruit and find more powerful deputies. Only then can each personnel level be ensured to have iron-like execution and discipline. This would also free up his energy to build the space-time beacon, aiming to actively plunder other space-time fragments. But so far, he only has one Solomon. However, in the short term, I can't find a deputy who can lead the soldiers and keep them in line, so for now, I have to rely on myself. Lin Yi quickly finished his dinner and returned home. He recalled the skill books Annie got from the reward egg. He placed all 4 skill books in front of him. Snake Transformation Skill Book, Ice Cold Skill Book, Rare Skill Book, Weapon Forging, Unique Skill Book, Extra Life a Unique Skill Book. Lin Yi inhaled sharply and picked it up. Ordinary skill books only have leather covers. Rare skill books have bronze-colored covers. And the cover of a unique skill book is silver, shining brightly. Full of anticipation, Lin Yi immediately began to check the description of this unique skill book. Extra Life, Unique Skill, Possessing Singularity. After the learner's death, there is a certain chance for this skill book to appear again. When you are under a fatal attack, whether it's immediate death or death soon, this skill will automatically generate a barrier to protect you from said attack. Can be activated once every 24 hours, amazing. Doesn't this mean I no longer have to worry about being sniped or ambushed? Lin Yi pondered the skill description, grinning as he talked to himself. But if I were to be slowly tortured to death, this skill might not be much use. He spent 5 minutes. Various slow and painful death scenarios played out in Lin Yi's mind. Being digested inside a giant snake, eaten by soldier ants. Being overpowered by women in bed. Lin Yi shook his head, trying to shake those absurd images out of his mind. After learning the skill, he decided to go for a walk to divert his attention. By the lake, there was another music concert, this time performed by a middle-aged man with long hair. Soothing music began, and people paired up and danced gracefully. The violin concerto drifted melodiously. "Chen Yuiu, are you here?" As Lin Yi approached the concert site, he saw his #1 assistant and her sister Chen Lingling, boss. Hearing the voice of the person she had just been thinking about, Chen Yuiu turned around in surprise. Lin Yi sat down next to her, listening to music. "Yeah, my sister was particularly bored at home." Chen Yuiu tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I've already suggested to Natasha that we need to build a daycare center and a school, but how many teachers do we currently have here?" "Boss. We have 2 English teachers, a physics teacher, and a math professor." "Great." Lin Yi replied with a smile, then reached out to Chen Yuiu. "This tune is nice, do you want to dance?" All right." Chen Yuiu exclaimed joyfully, then turned to her sister. "Sister, will you stay here for a while?" Chen Lingling remembered that the first time the 2 sisters met Lin Yi, her sister also asked her to stay for a while. Then, at the thought of this, she nodded bashfully and quickly covered her eyes with her small hands, but left a gap. Chen Yuiu took Lin Yi's hand. Lin Yi led her to the dance floor. They placed their hands on each other's waists and began to dance to the serene music and pleasing French lyrics. Chen Yuiu could clearly feel the warmth of the hand on her waist, which reminded her of certain scenes. "Boss, you dance really well." Chen Yuiu felt a bit embarrassed, especially since most people present were watching her and Lin Yi. After all, the boss is a presence that draws attention wherever he goes. Sometimes, allies from the underworld need reassurance more than enemies do. Lin Yi led Chen Yuiu in a beautiful twirl. He truly danced well, his former boss had specifically made him attend dance classes before. With the end of a song, a new one began, followed by another. Lin Yi and Chen Yuiu just enjoyed dancing and happily chatted about various topics, from their favorite movies to who was really behind the apocalypse. Time flew by. The host was Katsuya, who announced a break and invited everyone to enjoy the buffet. Someone quickly came over and set up several tables. Then, some people brought over snacks and vegetables, along with tea and various high-calorie foods. Lin Yi looked at Chen Yuiu standing beside him and praised, "The organization of this event is quite good. It was Katsuya's idea, I only managed the arrangements." Chen Yuiu answered with a smile while helping Lin Yi select his favorite dishes for his plate. After snack time ended, the two chatted for another half an hour before the music started again. "Thank you for keeping me company tonight, boss. I haven't danced in a long time." Chen Yuiu checked the time on her watch, feeling a bit sad, then took her sleepy sister's hand. She wanted to spend more time with her boss, but she had to get up early tomorrow and needed a good night's sleep. "Haha, thank you as well. Initially, I only wanted to empty my mind and listen to music. We're leaving now, boss." Just as Chen Yuiu was about to leave, she suddenly stopped and turned around. She hesitated for a moment but then said, "When we were dancing, I noticed Zoe sitting alone, looking envious of us. I think she'd be very happy if you went to her." "Zoe? That inconspicuous girl?" Lin Yi was momentarily stunned, then nodded. He bid farewell to Chen Yuyu, watched the stage performance for a while, then went to find Zoe. She was sitting under a lush willow tree, hugging her knees with a sorrowful expression as she watched everyone dance. Instead of approaching her directly, Lin Yi made a small circle, approaching from behind her. "Ha, there you are?" Lin Yi suddenly spoke, startling the poor girl. "Boss?" Hearing Lin Yi's voice, Zoe jumped up, and then she realized that the person she had been thinking about was right behind her. Her face turned red as she took a step back. As she stepped back, she accidentally tripped. But just before she fell, Lin Yi, like the hero in a romance novel, swiftly moved forward and gently caught her with his strong arms. Their faces were very close. As their noses touched for an instant, they could feel each other's breath. Zoe's pupils contracted sharply. Her heart rate soared to 180. Lin Yi smiled and then whispered something softly. Zoe didn't quite hear him, her heart was pounding rapidly, and in her excitement, she directly fainted. Then, did the boss start performing CPR? Haha, of course, this was the version Zoe imagined. The reality was. Chapter 107, Kissed. Done. Inside the shelter, Zoe stepped back and tripped over a small rock. But behind her, there was a big rock. No matter what, it was impossible to fall without harm. Lin Yi realized Zoe's little head might get hurt, so he immediately activated the skill. Combat Reflex. He rushed to the girl, grabbing her hand with one hand and holding her waist and legs with the other before she fell. That was close. Did I really have to use Combat Reflex? I tell you, women are just trouble. Lin Yi muttered, but before he had time to help Zoe up, she had already fainted. So unlucky. The next day, morning. The first rays of sunlight shone through the leaves outside the window, into a small room. A slender girl with a kind face, who made people feel very comfortable, was lying on a light green bed. Knock, knock, knock. The sound of knocking was heard. Then Oriana's voice came from outside the door. "Zoe, wake up, it's time for breakfast." The two girls lived in a two-bedroom house, and Oriana usually got up early because she was responsible for farm management. "Wait a minute, Oriana." Zoe rubbed her sleepy eyes but suddenly reacted. Then, the memories of last night flooded back, and she jumped up from the bed. "How did I get home, Oriana? The boss? What happened?" "Oh." Zoe fell back to the bed, tightly hugging the pillow, rolling around the blanket. Her mind was filled with fantasies of what might have happened. "Was I hugged?" "Sure, I was hugged." "Kissed? Did something happen? How will we interact in the future? What's the kid's name gonna be? The boss brought you back. He said you fainted, maybe you weren't feeling well." Oriana glanced at Zoe through the door, then shook her head and turned back to her room. She originally wanted to tell Zoe that the boss carried her back like a sack of potatoes. But after thinking about it, she decided to let her good friend indulge in her own fantasies. Real world, Paris streets. "Boss, are you sure you don't need help?" "No need, but connect Nika with me. You monitor closely, she observes from afar." Lin Yi said, his sword flashing as he slashed down another hissing zombie. "Got it." Melanie immediately responded. Early morning. An hour before breakfast. Lin Yi woke Melanie up. He planned to exercise and improve his strength by starting with a morning workout. He is currently level 8 and needs 640 more experience points to reach level 9. If he only hunts regular zombies, he estimates he'll need to kill 584 of them. But upgrading like this is too stupid. Small fry zombies are only good for a light workout to sharpen reflexes. If he wants to level up, the big zombies are more suitable. Because you only need to shoot them in the eyes or pierce the skull with a sword to deal with them. Lin Yi walked down the street, attacking any zombies he saw. If there were too many zombies, he'd use a submachine gun. If they were overwhelming, he'd set up barricades with junk from the warehouse. Then take them down one by one. "Boss. There's an agile mutant zombie in the building across from you, lying in ambush waiting for you to get close." "Got it." Hearing Melanie's report, Lin Yi quickly headed towards the building. Bam. Bam. Soon, there was dull thudding from the building, followed by a louder crash. Then, the window shattered, and a mutant zombie was kicked down from the third floor of the apartment building. This zombie was tougher than expected, trying to get up and pounce on the person who jumped down. Lin Yi activated Combat Reflex, pulled out his level 3 pistol, and fired at the mutant zombie while descending. 3 out of 4 bullets hit. The mutant zombie's left leg was almost completely severed, and a big hole appeared in its head. "Finally got my revenge." Lin Yi was very excited. This agile mutant zombie had initially chased him like a high jumper. It even forced him to hide in the shelter for several days. Now, finally took this guy down. Picking up the green reward egg, Lin Yi returned to the shelter. Using combat reflex had consumed too much physical strength and energy, so he splashed some water on his sweat-drenched body and went to have breakfast. That morning, Lin Yi planned to prepare for a large-scale raid. So even the ordinary soldiers were enjoying an exceptionally hearty breakfast. Little Natasha asked, "Boss, are you going to the Sacred Heart Cathedral today?" "Yes." Lin Yi nodded. He planned to sell some food to the Sacred Heart Cathedral and buy some equipment. Previously, they promised to give him some biofuels and bombs, which he would also obtain this time. In addition, besides checking with the manual for the latest news, he also wanted to acquire some manufacturing or agriculture-related books and documents from the camp. This is very important for long-term development. After thinking for a moment, Lin Yi looked at the red-haired girl across the table. "Sylvie, you can pick an assistant, anyone you choose." "Okay, boss." "And Melanie? Any progress?" "The surveillance department still hasn't found a suitable person. The applicants so far are all unsuitable." The black girl recalled that one candidate actually wrote good at spying on boys showering from a distance in their resume, feeling a headache. "This is just temporary, we'll hire more people soon, it'll get easier then." Smiling, the boss finished speaking and focused on the rabbit meat marinated in vegetable sauce. At this moment, Martha noticed something off with Zoe. Concerned, she asked, "What's wrong with Zoe?" "Zoe, are you sick? Your face is so red." "She's fine, don't worry about her." Anna said with a chuckle. Annie suddenly sensed the scent of gossip and immediately became energized. Lin Yi put down his chopsticks and stood up to leave. He is going to prepare for the raid. According to the plan, the team should head towards the Sacred Heart Cathedral, eliminating any zombies encountered along the way. Well, except for the hordes of thousands of zombies. This time, they wouldn't loot stores as the shelter's mission countdown was approaching 0. There were 50 participants in this operation, including 46 soldier warriors and a cute girl. Her skill is called Banshee's Wail, and test records show that the skill made earwax explode from a zombie's ear, with no other effect. However, the system skills are meant to deal with zombies. They might be ineffective on regular zombies, but they could have miraculous effects on mutant zombies. Lin Yi returned to Paris, standing in front of the apartment building. He first teleported a few people from the shelter. Each team stepped outside to wait for the other paratroopers. This team would be split into 2 groups, one led by himself, the other by Solomon. Overnight, a large number of zombies appeared in this area, but the warriors quickly cleaned them out. One warrior suddenly asked, "Boss, what would happen if we threw scrap metal into a bottomless pit?" "Good question, let's give it a try." Chapter 108, Boss is Awesome. Paris streets. Lin Yi had never thought about this question before. Does life substance exist in metal waste? The answer is, both yes and no, very abstract. The pit has processed this item. Shelter has acquired 377 units of substance. Shelter, what does the asterisk mean after the substance, and what's the use of this substance? Substance refers to non-biological things, and the asterisk indicates you can check the extended list. Do you think iron, stone, or glass are all the same kind of substance? Lower life forms? Seeing the shelter's response, Lin Yi's right brow bone unconsciously twitched. Is it taunting me with words? Are you dizzy from hunger? Lin Yi waved his hand and modified the transmission permissions rules for all soldiers. Previously, warriors could only transport corpses to the pit and items to the warehouse, but now they can also send items into the bottomless pit. After changing the permission parameters, he raised his arm and yelled. "Listen up. On the way, send everything that can be transmitted back into the pit. Even if it's just a street lamp, as long as it can be sent, send it in." A soldier heard the command, received the permission, and quickly put his hand on a car. In an instant, the car disappeared, leaving behind shards of glass and some junk. "Success!" the soldier shouted excitedly. "The pit has processed this item. Shelter has acquired 299 units of substance. Nicely done." Lin Yi nodded approvingly. However, to be on the safe side, he set a restriction on the types of items the warriors could transmit. It must be recognized by the shelter as junk, otherwise some idiot might send an entire tank into the pit. At this moment, Melanie's voice suddenly came through the headset. "Boss, there's a large group of zombies up ahead." "How many?" 300. "I have a plan." Lin Yi returned to the shelter, did some authorization-related operations, and then returned to real-world Paris. "Retreat, transfer 30 cars to location J." Boss ordered loudly. Solomon looked bewildered. "J point?" But he quickly understood. In the transmission permissions, there was a newly named Area J by the boss. The world of space-time fragments. Junk, the meaning of rubbish. Lin Yi clearly regarded the world of space-time fragments as a backup junkyard for the shelter. Solomon didn't yet know why the boss wanted to transfer 30 cars to Point J, but without hesitation, he executed immediately. As zombies slowly but steadily approached, soldiers started running around. They nervously transmitted one car after another onto the occupied fragment world. At this moment, a large pile of scrap cars was assembled there. Retreat. With Lin Yi's quiet shout, all the warriors lined up behind the boss, ready and waiting. Lin Yi raised an arm and crooked a finger. Boom boom boom. Scrap cars came falling from the sky. In an instant, the street assembled a genuine barrier made of cars. Awesome. The soldiers shouted out in shock. This was a new word they learned from the boss. Lin Yi waved his hand. Everyone, get in position, start earning experience points. Yes, boss. The soldiers shouted in unison. Don't shout so loud, or else all the zombies will rush at us. Lin Yi shouted at the soldiers, who were high on adrenaline. The battle officially began. Zombies were like black tides, smashing against the car barricade, unable to shake it at all. All car doors were open to the zombies, so they could only try to pass through the barrier. Some crawled from under the hoods, while others went through the car doors. But no matter where they walked, cold shining blades and axes awaited them. The archers were efficiently racking up experience points. Their arrows were so numerous, they almost couldn't be counted. They would pull arrows out from the zombie bodies, reusing them. If only there was a long spear. A soldier said while stabbing a zombie crawling from under an open hood. Lin Yi touched his chin. That's a good idea, a long spear might be better in certain scenarios. Boss, you're getting flanked. Melanie's panicked voice came through the headset. She hadn't expected the zombies would use tactics, so she didn't notice the mutant zombies flanking from behind. Lin Yi turned around, only to see an agile-type mutated zombie sneaking up from behind. Lin Yi remained steady and hadn't acted yet. Solomon stepped forward and swept the agile-type zombie with a submachine gun. He first hit its left leg, then immediately activated his skill. The mutant zombie stumbled but stood back up quickly. However, a giant stone fist was already smashing straight at its face. The zombie tried to dodge, but it was too late. The stone fist hit its target, smashing the ugly face of the mutant zombie into pulp. Solomon followed up relentlessly, landing another strike, and the agile-type zombie was completely dead. Well done, Solomon. Lin Yi intended to say. That's my experience points, but ended up not. Now, killing ordinary zombies didn't provide much improvement for him, only mutant zombies did. But he wouldn't slack off on leveling up and enhancing his combat powers, just because he was a farmer. Any other situations, Melanie? Lin Yi asked while surveying the battlefield. Currently, everything was progressing smoothly, mainly due to the incredibly effective barricade. It worked wonders. Although zombies had to slowly trudge toward the soldiers, slowing down the combat pace, no one was injured, and the soldiers wouldn't get too tired. They only need to stand there, chop away, occasionally toss corpses into the pit. Which is why every camp in Paris had barricade defenses set. Everything looks normal right now, Melanie reported. Upon hearing this, Lin Yi nodded. More than half of the warriors here were equipped with system armor, and all warriors' vaccine bracelets were filled with life-saving vaccines. So they fought confidently, even fiercely. Each one tried to rake in as much experience points as possible and perform before the boss. After all, they knew the shelter's warrior teams would grow stronger. As long as these veterans kept steady and worked hard, promotion and rank advancement were within reach. I leveled up to level 5. Dhuan shouted. His half-man half-bear body began to change, muscles bulged, skin thickened, arms and legs grew robust. Due to overly thick fingers, he could no longer use firearms but could wield melee weapons. His big claws could easily tear zombie guts, fangs could pierce thin metal. His body data significantly improved, and his immunity made him immune to level 2 viruses. Fantastic, pretty amazing. Lin Yi smiled. His meat shield had gotten stronger. Chapter 109, Top-Notch Woman Paris Streets. After clearing all the corpses and cars in the area, Lin Yi led the team onward. This time, they killed a total of 354 zombies and 1 mutant zombie. Thanks to the roadblocks, the soldiers were unscathed. After a few sips of spring water, they were reinvigorated, their spirits high. On the way, Lin Yi considered playing music to lure some zombies out. But then he imagined that the sound might attract a whole horde of thousands of zombies. Perhaps among them, there would be a bunch of agile mutant zombies, so he decided to abandon the idea. At this rate, we might not make it to the Sacred Heart Cathedral before dark. In the past 2 hours, the team had only advanced a little over 2 kilometers. Yet they had killed over 1,000 zombies, fighting every few steps they took. Should we try the sewers again? Lin Yi ate something, talking to himself. But that laboratory. Now the whole city was crawling with chimpanzee zombies, but no one ever mentioned those rats hiding in the sewers. Damn, if everyone who had seen the rats was dead, wouldn't they be walking into a trap if they went down? Lin Yi spent some time pondering the current situation, looked at his warriors, and shook his head. It was best not to take risks. After the break, the team moved on, but the closer they got to the city center, the more zombies they encountered. About an hour later, the team discovered a place where a recent battle had taken place. Judging by the fresh bloodstains, the fight had ended not long ago. It looks like a survivor's encampment tried to fight their way out of this Paris. Solomon assessed the situation on the battlefield. On the ground lay about 150 bodies, most of them wearing system armor. A few guns were also left on site, which the warriors collected. Solomon finally sighed. They were in vehicles at the time, but ended up falling into a zombie ambush. There were about 30 civilians. It seems like some mutant zombies gave them a hard time, but Lin Yi squinted at a large dent on a minibus, thought for a moment, then spoke. But I feel that some people survived. Firstly, these civilians didn't turn into zombies, and there are no supplies left here. Boss, you're right. So what should we do? Well, do nothing. Lin Yi ordered the warriors to collect all the bodies and move the bus into the pit. After all, they could never have enough supplies. The team moved on. 40 minutes later, they stumbled upon an abandoned defensive structure of a medium-sized camp. This building was originally a private school, with a tall, sturdy concrete wall. Later, it had been retrofitted with various scraps into watchtowers, and even spotlights were set up around it. Overall, its defenses were quite impressive. However, none of this saved the survivors, and the school was now filled with thousands of zombies. Xiaoxuan gasped, how did they break through the defenses? Look over there. Lin Yi pointed to a spot. Beneath the concrete walls, hundreds of zombie bodies had been piled up, allowing the horde to easily scale over the dirt walls. Xiaoxuan's eyes were filled with fear, muttering, They climbed up using the zombie bodies? But their intelligence has evolved way too fast. Lin Yi remained silent. He estimated that among this horde, there must be a particularly cunning mutant zombie. In fact, it resembled a general. An intelligent zombie general. Lin Yi sighed, with a look of pain and regret, at the private school. He could bet that inside, there was a huge amount of supplies and coins. But to use his hit-and-run tactic to kill tens of thousands of zombies would take at least a week, if not 2. But he might not have the chance. Paris was destined for destruction soon. Here, zombies were roaming in great numbers, including dozens of mutant zombies. Trying to sneak past the school was quite tricky. Normally, mutant zombies didn't like open spaces, preferring to lurk in shadowy areas. Lin Yi felt a bit uneasy. The thought of a zombie general possibly lurking somewhere in the city made him desperately want to blow the whole city sky high. After 3 attempts, the team finally found a suitable route to bypass the dangerous area. Along the way, they stumbled upon another battlefield where survivors had once more been defeated. They couldn't determine if these people had escaped from the school or came from other camps. But regardless of who they were, none survived, the freshly turned zombies roaming about serving as proof. This was post-apocalyptic Paris. 2 hours later, using vehicle blockade tactics, Lin Yi and the team quickly cleared the battlefield. They killed 500 zombies, with no injuries amongst them. Among them, 6 reached level 5, using skill points to enhance their basic skills. The lightning mage was extremely excited because the lightning technique's range and power had increased. Xiaoxuan's archery skills also leveled up, allowing him to shoot chain lightning arrows with his bow or aim a more focused electric arrow at a single target. The flame mage's flame spray also increased its range, not only setting zombies on fire but continuously creating a firewall, though at a great magic value cost. If a mage used up their magic value, they would have to fight with swords like the other warriors. After clearing the battlefield, the team rested for 10 minutes, catching their breath and having a bite to eat. An idea struck. Mage reported, Boss, I have an idea. Let's hear it. We could form a one-time magic squad. One time. Lin Yi raised an eyebrow. Not literally, boss. The mage, seeing everyone looking at him, confidently stood out. He began to explain. The shelter should have a special center, where mages can recover their magic value faster. When needed, summon the magic squad to quickly cast magic. Once they exhaust their magic value, send them back to the shelter to continue recovering. So that next time, they can be summoned again. Lin Yi listened in amazement. The main challenge was that the store hadn't yet unlocked such a special center for quick magic value recovery. So he asked, What do you think this center should be like? Well, mages recover magic value faster in a comfortable environment, so the more comfortable the mages, the faster their magic value recovers. Lin Yi instantly understood and mischievously prompted the mage to continue. The mage enthusiastically continued, "So, I think there should be hot tubs, beautiful masseuses, soothing music, a pleasant atmosphere. Get to the point. And, top-class escorts." The mage burst into a silly laugh. Chapter 110, Providing Special Services Paris Streets. After listening to the mage's suggestion, Lin Yi nodded. He smiled back and said, "I think we should teach this guy a lesson." The angry warriors all chimed in agreement. The mage panicked instantly, losing his nerve. "Boss. This is not advisable." "Haha, I'm just joking, but the others aren't joking." Lin Yi shrugged casually, then put on a serious face. "I would rather give you a machine gun than let you go leisurely playing with women while we're fighting for our lives here." "Oh. I understand." Bang, bang, bang. With 3 muffled sounds, the mage got beaten, though the warriors just gave him a few symbolic punches. Lin Yi encouraged everyone, shouting, "Let's rest for 5 more minutes, then we'll set off." After the break, the team set off once again. But they hadn't gone far when the archer suddenly warned them, reporting a large group of zombies approaching. Among them were a lot of mutant zombies. Lin Yi quickly sent all soldiers back to the shelter, rushing alone to a nearby apartment building. He blocked the door, cleared out a few zombies nearby, then returned to the shelter. Everyone in the shelter stared at the laptop's surveillance screen, silent and terrified. On the screen, the massive zombie horde seemed like a giant, all-devouring snake winding through the streets, destroying everything in its path. The long wait lasted an entire hour, yet the advancing zombie horde showed no sign of stopping. Even more terrifying was the appearance of more advanced mutant zombies within the horde. Level 1 mutant zombies still looked somewhat human-like, but Level 2 mutant zombies appeared more like monsters, each with a unique appearance. Some had bony protrusions, some were covered in tough scales, others looked half human, half spider. At this time, returning to the reality of Paris is akin to courting trouble. By noon, Lin Yi instructed the warriors to take a rest while he studied alternative routes. Lunch was a bit somber. Little transparent Zoe suddenly raised her hand. "Just speak your mind, after all the time we've spent together, no need for such formality." Lin Yi chuckled and stuffed meat into his mouth. Upon hearing time together, Zoe blushed instantly, her ears turning red. She stammered, "Boss, if we took the subway, how about it?" "No way, too many zombies in the subway, many have died there." Melanie immediately opposed. Lin Yi didn't speak, pulling up the Paris subway map on his phone for a careful study. As he looked, he pondered. If there really was a zombie general concentrating all the mutant zombies in one place in the city, perhaps those mutant zombies that used to hunt the subway had also left their nests. But underground, there might be mutant rats. And it's very dark down there. However, if we get a military jeep and mount several powerful floodlights, drive in with flare, what can a bunch of little rats do to a military jeep? Although battling on the ground can train soldiers and improve their levels. Judging by the current situation with the zombie horde, staying on the ground is actually very dangerous. I think this is a good plan. Lin Yi's words reignited the spark in Zoe's dim eyes. He nodded at the girl, carefully explaining his rationale. Many hadn't thought that far. After listening thoughtfully, they all nodded in agreement. Lin Yi finally weighed the pros and cons, then looked at the old letter Louis, the Jeep modification. "Boss, leave it to me, but let me eat a few more bites, okay?" As Louis spoke, he gobbled down food. He had fought until dawn last night with Zhao Hong, and this was his first meal today. Since becoming a professional, his physical strength was excellent, practically rejuvenated. "Eat more." The boss nodded to Louis, then turned to Chen Yuiu. "How's the harvest?" Chen Yuiu keeps a daily harvest list, handing it to the boss. Lin Yi took it and checked it. Before lunch, the farmers had just completed the latest crop harvest. Tons of potatoes, 25 tons of vegetables, 7 tons each of wheat and corn harvested. Apples and pears expected to be harvested tomorrow. The rabbits are also raised well, but we need more people to cut the rabbit meat and process the rabbit hides. It's always like this, one moment there's plenty of people, suddenly there's a shortage. Lin Yi grumbled, finished his portion of rabbit steak and mashed potatoes, and suddenly had a light bulb moment. He remembered what that mage soldier suggested. The idea to build a special center to help mages recover their magic value faster. His idea was sloppy but had some merit. Everyone knows the water in Miraculous Lake can heal wounds and restore energy. So why not build a rehabilitation center there with hot baths, massages, lounges, entertainment facilities? You know, including karaoke and bars, building a rehabilitation center for all cleaning teams. This way, everyone can recover faster. If the warriors someday face prolonged intense battles, this might be the key to victory. That's a great idea, boss. As the head city planner of the shelter, little girl Natasha wholeheartedly agreed with the boss's vision. But there's a problem, she said. We must open it to everyone, otherwise, people might take issue. Yes. I really want to go to a place like that. Annie jumped up from her chair, her voice almost shattering the soup bowl. Karaoke all night. I love karaoke. That place could be very expensive, though. Zoe raised her hand, timidly reminding. She's right. A place for letting loose can't use just bricks and wood, it requires at least reinforced concrete. Must also build gender-specific zones and accommodate at least 200 people, meaning several floors need to be built. Besides this, there are potential risks. With entertainment scaled up, people might lean towards leisure and lack the drive to join the army. Ultimately, entertainment facilities shouldn't only provide special services to those defending the home. Even if it does, it might cause soldiers' discipline to scatter. However, Lin Yi made the final decision. Build a center accommodating 50 people initially, but plan to expand for at least 200 people in the future. No one voiced opposition, so lunch went on. Annie was ecstatic about the karaoke and bar idea, busily preparing. She resolved to scour the entire warehouse, gathering everything needed for entertainment projects. And she wrote in her memo, must have karaoke tracks. My boss is a potato. She also tried to persuade Melanie to coincidentally take the boss to a karaoke bar. To let him loot some things. Chapter 111, I Understand Women. Paris, subway station entrance. In front of Lin Yi was a motionless escalator leading into the dark underground, and the steps were covered with bloodstains. Following the usual horror tropes. He should immediately encounter those extremely bizarre things and experience some supernatural phenomenon. Those entities lurking in the shadows are waiting to devour any intruder. Every last one of them. Don't scare me like that, boss. Dhuan anxiously stared into the darkness, his forehead already drenched in sweat. He had heard many horror stories about the subway while at the Louvre, and shadows had already formed in his heart. Stop being so jumpy. Look at you, built like a bear. You'll be perfect as a meat shield at the back. While the monsters are biting you, we'll have enough time to escape. Boss. Solomon, take the lead. Yes, boss. As the light from skills activation flickered, Solomon transformed into a stone man. He began to cautiously walk along the escalator towards the subway platform. He wore a headlamp on his forehead and chest, as did the others. A few people held a flashlight in each hand to illuminate the road for the rest of the team. When the last team member stepped onto the escalator, the already terrified Dhuan clambered onto it almost in a frantic crawl. Inside the subway station. This smell. A soldier covered his mouth and nose, stumbling back. It's like the stench of rotting flesh mixed with rust. As soon as the team descended into the subway station, they were immediately enveloped by the intense stench of decay. The empty platform was eerily silent, with no sign of the expected zombie horde. This abnormal calm only made their nerves tighter. If there were dozens of zombies below, they could just kill them and be done with it. But now, they had to remain vigilant constantly, worried about something terrifying suddenly jumping out. Melanie, how's the scan? Sorry, boss. I can only see 10 to 20 meters ahead from the nearest light source. Night vision mode doesn't work in absolute darkness. After inspecting the subway station, the team didn't find enemies but found many signs of enemy presence. Over 100 skeletons gnawed to the bone, marked with rodent-like teeth marks, the scraps of decayed flesh glistening under the light. The stench was so overpowering that the warriors' eyes flowed with tears. Fortunately, Lin Yi found dozens of gas masks when looting that pharmaceutical company. Once the soldiers put them on, they could finally breathe normally. The design of the Paris subway is dual-track parallel. So, the military jeep could perfectly and steadily drive along the tracks. Mechanic Louis, this time you really outdid yourself. He reinforced the wheels, installed floodlights on the vehicle, and equipped it with a small gasoline generator to power the military vehicle. In addition, there were some seemingly unlikely features to come in handy. For instance, an air filtration system. Lin Yi sent that group of elated soldiers back to the shelter, while he, Zhao Chuan, and Solomon boarded the military jeep. This air filtration system is a lifesaver. Lin Yi said, taking off his gas mask and breathing in the fresh air deeply. I thought I was going to die. Dhuan also muttered, removing his medical mask and gasping for air. The current setup is: Zhao is the archer, with good eyesight, responsible for scouting, Solomon is the driver, and Dhuan, with a pale face, blocks the car door with his body, ready to act as a meat shield at any time. As for Lin Yi, he acts as the trump card to rescue the situation, ready to support at any moment. The floodlights illuminated the tunnels before and behind the vehicle. While the effect wasn't ideal, they still allowed easy identification of enemies within 20 to 30 meters of the Jeep. The Jeep drove along the tracks, its engine quietly roaring, occasionally crushing the scattered bones in the tunnel. Inside the vehicle was also quiet. Except for the calm boss, the other's pupils slightly contracted in the darkness, staring at the road ahead, waiting for trouble to appear. This anticipation is both exhausting and nerve-wracking. But 1 minute passed, then 2, 5, 10, and trouble still did not appear. The only thing they had to do was stare into the darkness, waiting for some bizarre entity to jump out. Then, swallow them all. Lin Yi was quite bored, attempting to pass the time and break the silence. He thoughtfully stroked his chin and spoke. Ziaxuan, have you and Melanie reconciled? No, boss, she doesn't really talk to me, Ziaxuan said gloomily and helplessly. I don't know how to talk to her. Melanie, what do you think? How should Ziaxuan talk to you? How to coax you so that you'd be satisfied? Boss. Now is not the time to discuss this. The voice of the black girl was full of anger, annoyed by Lin Yi's inopportune question. But Lin Yi was intrigued. He leaned back comfortably in his chair. Ha ha, I understand, you girls like to play this game, making men unable to guess your minds, but I can unfortunately say that these little tricks simply don't work. We men are very dim-witted in this regard unless you directly tell us what you want. Otherwise, we will never figure it out. Lin Yi laughed again. Having been young himself once, he had seen it all. Melanie just snorted in response. The conversation ended here, and Lin Yi turned his attention to the always panicked Diachuan. Diachuan, tell me, what horror stories about the subway have you heard? They say the Spider King lives down here. As Diachuan trembled while recounting, the Jeep continued to travel through the tunnel. Aside from a few straggling zombies, nothing too frightening appeared for the time being. Except for one zombie's intestines, dragging on the ground, crushed into paste by the wheels. Diachuan told Lin Yi many of the stories he remembered about the subway. There were many stories, but most were extremely absurd. If the Weird Tales publisher was still around, these stories would have been front-page news. The more Diachuan spoke, the more frightened he became, and the more frightened he was, the more he spoke, his face already turning deathly pale and bloodless. 10 minutes later, at one of the subway stations, they found a small group of zombies, but when the Jeep passed, the zombies could only roar helplessly, with a few particularly stubborn ones jumping onto the tracks and beginning to clumsily chase the vehicle. 15 minutes later, the military Jeep drove past another platform, but there was a large group of zombies. Ziaxuan shot arrows, his compound bow humming as it pierced through several of the zombies around the car, but this seemed to provoke the other zombies. Many zombies immediately began pursuing. There were no mutated ones among these zombies, so the military Jeep quickly left these pursuers behind. 20 minutes later, the Jeep could go no further. According to Solomon's assessment, there were at least 4 trains crashed together here, blocking the tunnel with wreckage, making it completely impassable. Solomon suggested, should we return to the platform and finish the rest of the journey on foot? Chapter 112, The Mess Between Men and Women. Paris, Subway Tunnel. Faced with Solomon's proposal, Lin Yi shook his head. On the previous subway platform, there were about 500 to 600 zombies, but the number on the surface would be 100 times that on the platform. Melanie, what's the situation with the other two? Sorry, boss, I can't see anything, it's too dark here. The black girl said with rare trembling, thermal imaging can't penetrate this level of darkness. Boss, maybe we can send the train and cars into the pit? I've thought about it, it won't work. The current level of the shelter can't transport something this big all at once. Lin Yi stood in front of a pile of twisted trains, pondered for a moment, and said, why not try making a hole on top and going through from there? Melanie, call Louis. Okay, boss. Half an hour later, Louis squatted in front of the train car and marveled. He needed to fetch a portable generator from the shelter to cut open the train. It's going to be especially loud, Louis said as he prepared to cut open the twisted train car. The generator started up, and Louis began cutting the car with a high-powered angle grinder. Amidst the engine's roar, the grinding wheel of the high-powered angle grinder emitted dazzling sparks, forming a terrifying resonance of metal twisting in the tunnel. In just a few minutes, a 2-meter square hole appeared on the side wall of the car. Suddenly, a zombie jumped out from the hole and grabbed the unsuspecting Louis. Lin Yi reacted instantly, a one-handed sword appearing in his hand, beheading the zombie in one swift stroke. The head rolled to the ground as the body heavily pressed down on Louis. The old mechanician's face was splattered with foul black blood. Frightened out of his wits, Louis took a while to recover, complaining tremulously, Melanie, why didn't you spot that thing? Scared the life out of my old buddy. He knew Melanie was responsible for using surveillance to monitor enemy movements and suspected this was a little payback from the girl for his drunken outburst last time. But Melanie really hadn't, It's too dark here, boss. I think I missed it. Sorry. If your luck was just a bit worse, you'd be saying sorry to Xiaong now, not me. Xiaong? The black girl asked, puzzled. Since everyone's walkie-talkies were on the same radio channel, Solomon chimed in. She's Louis's favorite goddess of love. He looks for her every day. You guys don't understand at all. She's a smart, considerate lady. Talking to her is like a godsend. If she's that wonderful, you should marry her before someone else takes her. With one sentence, Lin Yi left the professional veteran speechless, unable to utter a word for quite a while. When it comes to matters between men and women, either just talk about it or just do it, but not both. You want to talk and do it, do you want to ascend to heaven? Solomon, the car search is up to you. Lin Yi smiled and made a please go ahead gesture to the shelter commander. Solomon nodded earnestly, activated the stone skin skill, and entered the train car. Their worries were only partially justified. This train car was empty, but the next one was full of zombies. However, in this confined space, the zombies couldn't even scratch Solomon's skin. He moved as if walking through an empty space. Solomon's powerful strike scattered the zombies like bowling pins, and the one closest to him was flattened instantly. Then, when the zombies fell, his strong foot crushed their heads like eggs. The group moved forward to the third train car. Here, it was at a 90-degree angle, so Lin Yi decided to cut another hole. Boss. Zombie. Behind you. Ziaxuan, who was keeping vigilance at the back, suddenly shouted. Lin Yi spun around and swung his sword, decapitating several zombies in an instant. But then, in the darkness, a dense eerie red light flickered on. Melanie. How many are there? The black girl cried out in fear. There are hundreds, boss. As long as it's not thousands, then we're. No problem, come on. The boss snapped his fingers. Boom boom boom. Cars descended from the sky, instantly forming a barricade that blocked the entire tunnel. One by one, warriors who had been on standby, armed with weapons, appeared on the scene. Louis, show us the speed you have in bed. Boss, I'm not. The old pervert's face looked like he had swallowed a fly, trying to defend himself. Lin Yi didn't intend to listen, he waved his hand. Solomon, attack. Yes, boss. A battle ensued. The positions of several cars were especially suitable for archers to shoot easily from the rooftops. Each warrior wore a flashlight on their forehead, and in addition to floodlights, several large handheld lanterns were placed on the cars where the archers were stationed. In short, the battlefield was lit up brightly. Half an hour passed, and zombies continued to pour in. Due to the overwhelming number of zombies in the train cars, Louis's progress was significantly slowed. Sometimes, he had to retreat a few cars back, like a mouse, carving a new path through the maze. The soldiers tried to teleport the zombies to the bottomless pit after killing them. But the zombies came too quickly, and for safety's sake, only a third of the zombie corpses were teleported. As a result, a large number of zombie corpses accumulated and obstructed the car barricade's defense. Everyone, retreat to the new defensive position. Lin Yi ordered the soldiers to pull back and then set up another barricade with cars. Can't I just burn them? Asked a second-level flame mage. Idiot, then we'll all suffocate. Everyone remember, no fire allowed. Lin Yi's voice was so loud that everything here could hear it. Also, no lightning. Don't forget, we're on electrified tracks. The battle continued to intensify. The warriors began to feel quite fatigued, but the zombies kept coming. Lin Yi was already covered in a mix of blood and mud, having killed up to a fifth of the total dead zombies. Done, boss. The path is clear. Louis crawled out from the tunnel, filthy. Solomon asked, Boss, retreat? Are you crazy? Look over there. Lin Yi instantly flew into a rage and pointed to a spot. There, a mountain of zombie corpses piled up. That's also the spoils of war. How many zombies did they kill? 500? 1,000? At least they'll get a dozen reward eggs. Reward eggs mean equipment, vaccines, and skills. Lin Yi certainly didn't fall for the folly of dying for wealth. He observed and estimated that the zombie horde was gradually running out of steam. But with this time talking, it's better to kill zombies. Understood, boss. Solomon didn't understand but never defied orders. He straightened his expression and followed the boss's pace. The soldiers heard the boss's words too, realized they were going to fight to the end, and rallied their spirits again. Chapter 113, Wrathstorm Paris, in the metro tunnel. Just as Lin Yi predicted. 10 minutes later, the zombies stopped advancing, leaving behind a pile of zombie corpses. In the tunnel, there were thousands of zombie corpses stacked haphazardly, with black and red blood forming a nauseating river of blood. Any devout vegetarian monk, upon seeing this battlefield, would likely get so excited they'd wet their pants. The soldiers, fighting fatigue, weaved through the pile of corpses, cautiously collecting bodies and loot. If they suspected any zombie wasn't fully dead, or if its head looked too intact, they would have to deliver a fatal blow to confirm its end. This was lesson one that Lin Yi had taught them. "There's a giant white rat here." A soldier's cry shattered the dead silence. With his shout, a mutant rat the size of a house cat darted out from the corpse pile, startling the nearby soldiers into retreating. Lin Yi immediately realized the severity of the situation. "Damn. Everybody move faster. If you see one, it means there are hundreds more." Before he finished speaking, the tunnel erupted into chaos. The soldiers were in a complete panic, starting to collect bodies and loot as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, due to the dim light, they had to abandon searching for scattered coins. "Boss. Rats. I saw 3. Dhuan, this pair of a man, leapt up like a cat." Lin Yi ignored him, waved a hand, and teleported everyone back to the shelter, leaving only himself and Solomon behind. Solomon quickly teleported the military jeep and the generator back to the shelter. Then he climbed into the carriage and used an air conditioner from the warehouse to block the entrance. Only then did he transform into a stone man. "I'll clear the path." 5 minutes later, the two of them reached the other side of the carriage. Looking back, hundreds of white rats crawled out from every crevice of the tunnel. Each one was as big as a cat. The rats began greedily gnawing at the corpses, but suddenly they turned around, hissing menacingly. Lin Yi's heart tightened. He immediately teleported the jeep back onto the tracks, summoned Dazuan, and continued leading the team forward. At this moment, a voice came through the headset. It was the little girl Natasha. "Boss, if you handle the materials needed for pit construction, it seems to reduce building costs." Upon hearing this, Lin Yi immediately thought of materials. "But where do I find steel and concrete? Do I need to dismantle a building?" "You don't need real concrete, you can use its components, like cement, gravel, sand." "Alright, let's grab whatever we can," Lin Yi summarized, then ended the conversation, noting that some people's talk was a bit too professional. 10 minutes later, the jeep successfully passed through the next metro station. Along the way, they encountered several groups of zombies, but these zombies were knocked away like bowling pins. Suddenly, a shockwave came from somewhere above, causing part of the tunnel's ceiling to collapse. Even the military jeep bounced due to the massive impact. "What the hell?" Solomon gripped the steering wheel with one hand and rubbed the bump on his head with the other. Melanie spoke through the headset. "Boss. There's someone on the surface shelling a large group of zombies. Looks like the Red Wine General. He still dares to attack the city. If they're shelling, it's definitely precision targeting, able to strike any point within the city." Lin Yi muttered to himself, suddenly cursing, "Damn it, we're directly beneath the shelling area?" "Yes, low." Before Melanie could finish, another round of shelling exploded in the area above them. What are they using to bomb? The whole city is about to be blown to pieces. This shockwave was even stronger than the last. The ceiling in front of them swayed as if about to collapse. Though it hadn't completely fallen yet. It wouldn't hold much longer. "Solomon, have you ever done drag racing?" Lin Yi suddenly asked. Solomon was puzzled. "No. Want to experience real drag racing? Let me show you the prowess of the gang racing champion." With that, Lin Yi lifted Solomon and plopped him in the back. He then sat in the driver's seat and grabbed the steering wheel. "Hold tight. Is your seatbelt fastened?" Without waiting for anyone to answer, he slammed on the gas pedal. This military jeep, designed for transporting high-ranking officers, performed outstandingly in this trial. Not only was it easy to maneuver on the subway track, but it also had great driving performance and incredible speed. Especially under Lin Yi's control, it shot forward like an arrow, precisely skimming the edges to avoid falling debris. This left everyone with him looking pale. But the greater crisis followed immediately. Another explosion rang out, and the already shaky tunnel ceiling finally gave way. But Lin Yi had already driven the jeep out of the shelling area, moving over 300 meters ahead. Yet, they faced another disaster. Behind them, the tunnel collapse was true enough, but the section of tunnel they were in also developed cracks. The cracks widened into holes. From the hole on the right, cat-sized white rats poured out. From the hole on the left, dog-sized gray rats dug their way in. The rats and mice, like a landslide, surged towards the jeep from both sides. Even Solomon, as composed as he was, couldn't help but draw a breath, his face devoid of color. "Oh my god. We're all going to die. Boss, let's go back to the shelter. The legends about the subway are all true." Dhuan was completely terrified, though it was unclear if he wet his pants. "Exciting." Lin Yi burst into wild laughter. First, he teleported the 3 idiots, who were already terrified to incoherence, back to the shelter. The jeep surged forward at full speed. The mutant rats were getting closer, and the entire area up ahead was filled with frenzied rats and mice. Lin Yi gripped the wheel with his left hand, holding a sword in his right. The jeep slid across the battlefield like a sled, leaving bloodstains in its wake. Those were the bodies sliced in half. 1 second, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds. The incoming animals increased in number, piling on top of each other now. 30 seconds, 40 seconds, 50 seconds. Rats and mice began to fall from the ceiling like rain, their plump bodies thudding on the jeep's roof, hood, and windshield, making whip-splattering sounds. The vehicle still held out, but the right front spotlight broke first, followed by both rear lights going out. Either something heavy hit them, or rats chewed through the wires. Good. 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 Lin Yi roared with a shout, using a board to wedge the gas pedal down. He drew his sword, took his gun, and began a gruesome slaughter. Another minute passed. The influx of rats was nearly 2 meters high, the jeep dyed red, yet still sped crazily on the path paved with corpses. Suddenly, another explosion came from above. The ratfall intensified, turning into a true rat storm. Chapter 114, Specializing Between the Legs. Paris, Subway Tunnel. The blade in Lin Yi's hand suddenly halted. In his vision, the swarm of white and gray rats that had been surging madly suddenly erupted into fierce infighting. These mutated rodents bit and tore each other, their sharp teeth sunk into the flesh of their kind, blood flowing like a river. Finally, he had a chance to take a break. At this moment, the jeep had become a moving fortress of flesh. Dead rat bodies adhered densely to its surface, with blood coagulating into a dark red film on the glass. Visibility was essentially 0.1. Despite this, Lin Yi's gaze still captured the suffocating scene at the end of the tunnel. 2 supermutant rats, each the size of an African elephant, were locked in a life-and-death struggle. They were both heavily injured, neither willing to yield. As the monsters wrestled with each other, Lin Yi drove the jeep, charging through the middle of them. From a distance, Lin Yi felt a strong shockwave, then shouted, "Melanie, there's continuous explosions above, what's going on?" "Boss, the army and zombies are engaged in a large-scale battle." Red Wind Commander deployed tanks, fighting against a roughly 5-meter mutant zombie. Oh, the mutant zombie flipped over a tank, but a second later, both the mutant zombie and the tank were blown away by another tank. Melanie shouted excitedly, as if she were watching a war movie. "Sounds like they're having a blast up there. But we're not idle down here either, huh?" Lin Yi mumbled to himself, looking at a rat face, hideously pressed against the windshield. The rat hissed at him, struggling to bite, but was pinned down by the weight of other dead rats. Lin Yi jerked the steering wheel, the jeep snaking along the tracks, shaking off dozens of dead rats on the way. But the windshield remained smeared with blood and the bodies that couldn't be flung off. However, through the cracked walls and ceiling, light was beginning to filter in. "Boss, I can see clearly now, no rats ahead, you can drive safely." "Good." Under Melanie's guidance, the military jeep continued along the tracks. The tunnel occasionally shook, but a few minutes later, everything calmed down. No mutant animals, no zombies in sight. Lin Yi stopped in a safe spot and gathered his teammates. "Everyone, hurry up and clean this mess," he said while inspecting the jeep. The vehicle was splattered with blood, flesh, and entrails, but Lin Yi was determined to restore the jeep to its normal state. Ziaxuan dealt with the injured rats on the vehicle and then tossed their bodies into a pit. Solomon filled a bucket with water and washed away the blood and other filth on the jeep. Lin Yi summoned Louis to repair the 2 rear spotlights, as the wires inside had been gnawed through by rats. Just then, a strange and loud rumbling sound echoed in the tunnel, followed by another. The source of the sound seemed to be getting closer. "Everyone get in the car," Lin Yi shouted, quickly sending Louis back to the shelter. When everyone was on board, he slammed on the accelerator, and the jeep surged forward. Dhuan's face was pale, the sound from the monster sounded incredibly powerful. "What is it, boss?" "I don't know, but my gut tells me we might." "Boss. Something huge. Some kind of entity. Is approaching you from behind." Melanie screamed through the headset, making Lin Yi shake his head. "What is it?" "Seems like a giant, rat-like thing." "That's a rat, I can see it now," Lin Yi shouted, having seen the bizarre entity through the rear-view mirror. The monster chasing the jeep was about 5 meters high, at least 7 meters. No, possibly even longer. It had 6 legs and 3 tails, 2 of which were intact. The third was nearly chewed off, leaving just a stump. Its tail looked like an octopus tentacle, not with suckers, but adorned with sharp spikes. The mutant rat was severely injured, making it even more angry and frantic. Could it be one of the rats from the battle in the tunnel? Did it win? Then why chase me? Do I look like a snack it missed? Lin Yi wasn't driving the jeep now. A box with 10 anti-personnel hand grenades appeared in his hand. He began hurling them one by one at the rat's legs. Clearly, this guy was male. But the boss did it on purpose. The first grenade hit directly, only injuring one of the monster's legs. The rat staggered and rolled over, but almost immediately got up to continue the chase. Lin Yi threw another grenade at it, but this time the rat saw it coming and easily dodged. The third grenade also missed. "It's going to catch up, boss," Solomon shouted from the rear view, seeing the approaching monster, quickly reminding the boss to stop playing. Lin Yi pulled out an assault rifle loaded with explosive bullets, ready to give it a try. The Jeep's side window was narrow and couldn't open, so to shoot, Lin Yi grabbed the car frame with one hand to avoid being thrown out, and fired with the other. With tremendous strength, he didn't have to worry about the recoil at all. Lin Yi unleashed a frenzied barrage at the massive rat, aiming specifically at unhairy and injured areas. Of course, focusing mainly on a giant, bleeding wound on the creature's neck. And also its eyes, mouth, and other weak spots. But the rat wasn't dumb, lowering its head to shield its eyes if Lin Yi attacked, or turning to protect its throat if he aimed at the neck. Even so, its speed gradually waned. Lin Yi spent the last clip of explosive bullets, the rat still relentlessly chasing. He thought for a moment, then opened the car door and grabbed the Jeep's door frame. Reaching for a half-wrecked car, using inertia to fling it backward, accompanied by the sound of metal scraping. The rat collided with a little gift Lin Yi sent. The half-wrecked car flew like it was hit by a train, but the explosion from the car's fuel tank's shockwave also made the rat stagger. Seeing the success, Lin Yi felt a surge of joy. Taking advantage of the rat's destabilization, he once again gripped a car and hurled it at the rat. The rat, caught off guard, its ferocity fully ignited by the sudden assault. Blood gushing even more from its wounds, yet with murderous intent in its eyes, it lunged relentlessly. Good. At that moment, Lin Yi pulled out a level 3 pistol, squeezing the trigger as the rat approached. If a pistol shot from afar, its power might be insufficient, but up close, the effect was vastly different. Lin Yi had been waiting for just this opportunity. Bang! A thunderous echo sounded. The gunshot resonated intensely in the tunnel. The great rat let out a shrill and miserable scream. Chapter 115, Purple Reward Egg Paris, Subway Tunnel. A massive blood hole appeared on the forehead of the giant rat, bleeding continuously, and the injury worsening. It still wanted to chase, but quickly grew exhausted. The power anger gave it began to fade, replaced by pain and regret, and finally, its legs gave out, and it collapsed. With a last tender look at the handsome man who harmed it, using its last ounce of strength, it uttered once loved, then died. "The rat is down, boss," Solomon shouted excitedly, looking in the rearview mirror. Lin Yi checked and found he just gained 155 experience points. "Go back, collect the loot." The military jeep abruptly stopped and immediately began reversing towards the corpse of the monster. Once by the massive rat's corpse, Lin Yi jumped out of the car and teleported it to the shelter. He then looked not far away, where a coin and a reward egg lay. The coin had a value of 700, and the reward egg was purple. Lin Yi was as happy as a child, quickly teleporting the loot to the shelter. "Boss, there are rats coming over, and a lot of them. You need to get out of there," Melanie shouted in panic over the radio. Upon hearing this, Lin Yi jumped into the jeep. Solomon slammed on the gas, and the jeep sped away like an arrow leaving the bowstring. Trouble one after another. 10 minutes later, Lin Yi looked at the subway tunnel, at the obstacles formed by stacked boulders, feeling quite a headache. It's absolutely impossible to pass through here, and there's no way to see what's on the other side. Is the cathedral far from the last subway station? About an hour on foot. 3 minutes later, the jeep rolled back to the previous subway station. The place was full of walking and crawling corpses, most of them shuffling on the tracks. So, Lin Yi summoned the warriors from the shelter about 100 meters away from the subway station. He first sent his beloved jeep back to the shelter, then ordered the clearing of the area. There were only a little over 100 zombies, but he still set up a car barricade. Lin Yi didn't want to take any risks. Nobody knew what mutation might occur. Maybe a dozen mutated zombies were ambushing nearby. When there were only a few dozen enemies left, Lin Yi decided to have the warriors engage in some melee training. To kill a zombie, one must destroy its brain or damage its cervical spine. But zombies don't just stand there, they constantly swing their arms, trying to grab anyone in front of them. The warriors, having been through numerous battles, were no longer afraid of zombies, which was almost the most critical standard for victory. One-on-one, any of them could take down a zombie. But if faced with more than 2 zombies at once, their success rate would significantly decrease. The most lethal and common mistake the warriors made was focusing too much on the target in front of them, and not noticing another zombie often attacking from the side or behind. Even if the warriors wore vaccine bracelets, if a zombie bit their neck and broke an artery, they would surely die. So many warriors were worried about their safety, holding back and being cautious in battle. Summoning it up, with 100% strength, the warriors could only exert about 60% of it. This was under the premise of a lot of training and real combat, but if it were ordinary people, being able to exert 20 to 30% would already be impressive. Fortunately, through actual combat, as the warriors' attributes and skills improved, their performance could also enhance. Lin Yi discovered this, thus consistently creating opportunities for soldier practice in real battle. 15 minutes later, Lin Yi was gasping for breath. The warriors always made mistakes, he hadn't yelled like this in a long time. They cleared 120 zombies in the subway station, gaining 2 white rewards and 44 coins. Melanie, report the situation. Boss. There are about 30 zombies on the ground, and they're spread pretty thin. Understood. Lin Yi nodded and had the team line up to climb the escalator out of the subway station. As Melanie said, the zombies on the ground were scattered everywhere. Solomon ordered to approach before acting. Lin Yi looked around. Melanie, Nika, don't forget to watch those apartment buildings. Don't get ambushed by mutated zombies. Boss, everything is normal for now. I found a stash of supplies in the basement of a building across the street. Anything valuable? Some food. That's not much then, we need to get to the Sacred Heart Cathedral quickly. Lin Yi took out his smartphone to check their current location on the map. About an hour's walk to the destination. Fighting along the way, it will be dark before they arrive. Really wish my beloved motorcycle was still here. He nostalgically recalled his bike, so quiet it was nearly inaudible, allowing him to avoid unnecessary disturbances and roam freely in the city. Unfortunately, the motorcycle was crushed into scrap metal in the zombie swarm. 20 minutes later, Lin Yi led the team to stop in front of a large store called Best Circuit. It claimed to meet all your high-tech products and home appliance needs. It was a 5-story building, each floor specializing in selling a certain category of products. Computers and TVs were on the first floor, refrigerators and washing machines on the second, and so on. Melanie reported, Boss, inside there are 3 bulky zombies and 1 agile zombie. And about 200 ordinary zombies. Nika added. Lin Yi considered for a moment and arranged a battle. Zx. Everybody understand? Understood, boss. The soldiers shouted in unison. 40-odd exploded simultaneously, the clatter shaking dust off the walls, the tails of beastmen warriors snapping sharply. Could you keep it down? Lin Yi muttered, approaching the store, waved a hand, and a slew of cars fell from the sky, forming a barrier. The barricade was over 2 meters high. The noise attracted all the zombies, which roared and charged. The mutated zombies had yet to appear. The windows shattered, and the first wave of zombies began crawling out, only to find themselves completely surrounded by a wall of cars. Then, a rain of arrows shot over, taking down many zombies. Half were not hit in vital areas, struggling back up and charging at the barrier. The warriors were poised and ready. According to Lin Yi's orders, the warriors did not attack immediately, to draw out the mutated zombies. Otherwise, the unlucky 100 or so zombies would be slaughtered within minutes, and the mutated zombies inside the building would continue to hide. Once everyone entered the dark building, fighting the mutated zombies would become extremely dangerous. Boss. The agile zombie has run to the 2nd floor, I think they're going to jump down. The bulky zombies are about to hit our barricade. Melanie's voice suddenly pitched higher, shouting. Chapter 116, Paris Strongest Camp Paris, on the streets. Lin Yi raised his hand. The soldiers by the barricade stepped back about 2 meters, ready to fight at any moment. At this moment, a hulking zombie burst out from the store, starting to demolish the barricades in coordination. The wall of cars eventually gave way, splitting in 2, creating a path for the regular zombies. Lin Yi pulled out a level 3 gun and pulled the trigger. Bang! A nimble zombie that had just leapt from a 2nd-floor window had its head blown open. This thunderclap signaled the continuation of the battle. Xiaoxuan was the first to fire a lightning arrow. The hulking zombie's brain and the nearby zombies were scorched by the electricity. Then the mage used chain lightning skills to take out 2 more mutant zombies. The electric currents crackled through the rotten flesh, the scent of burning mixed with the gunpowder smoke spreading. Once the main threats were eliminated, the infantry charged forward together, wiping out the remaining regular zombies. This battle yielded 3 green rewards, 1 white reward. The result was lousy. Just as Lin Yi expected. This fight prompted the local zombie residents to start flooding the streets. They emerged from all directions, from apartment buildings, windows, holes in the walls. They walked, crawled, hopped, jumped, either alone or in groups. Some even limped like Grandpa Zhao and Master Fan. The team was divided into 2 groups, one holding the line in front of the store, the other clearing the building. Most of the zombies in the store had already gone down to the first floor during the previous battle, so clearing the remaining floors was much easier. Meanwhile, the battle outside was raging. There were about 200 zombies, and the barricade had been destroyed by the hulking zombies, so Solomon and some beastmen warriors had to use their bodies to fend off the enemy attack. But this situation didn't last long. After Lin Yi and his men entered the store, they didn't care what they took, they just grabbed whatever they saw. 20 minutes later, the 5-story building was cleared out completely. Only bare walls and floors remained. Back to the shelter, take a short break. Lin Yi was covered in blood from head to toe. The soldiers were equally disheveled, especially the beastmen warriors, whose fur was completely matted with blood and entrails. Once they hid well in the empty store, he led the team back to the shelter, cleaned up a bit, and had something to eat. Chen Yui even made Lin Yi some tea. 15 minutes later, everyone, filled with vitality, headed to the Sacred Heart Cathedral. The team advanced quickly along the way. Any zombie that got close was instantly killed, the team never paused. If zombies caught up, they were either killed or left behind. The archers were clearly instructed not to kill any zombies, or the team wouldn't be able to collect loot. As they moved, the soldiers gathered up whatever wasn't nailed down. Benches, cars, trash cans, bicycles. Even the bell of a rusty bicycle was taken off, ringing with a crisp sound. It was as if Lin Yi's endless greed had infected all the soldiers in the shelter. The night was getting late. Stopping was simply impossible. p.m. The team finally reached the Sacred Heart Cathedral. Lin Yi climbed to the rooftop of a nearby apartment building and looked down. What the? The whole cathedral camp was packed with tens of thousands of zombies and hundreds of mutant zombies. He could not imagine that this campsite of about 7,000 had just collapsed like this. There were so many coins there. Gone? Lin Yi's gaze darkened. Solomon asked, "What should we do?" "Find Hubert." Lin Yi took one last look at the smoking ruins of the Sacred Heart Cathedral, then climbed down from the rooftop. Hubert, the scar-faced general. He had once boasted that his commercial building camp had the most elite armed forces in all of Paris. His camp wasn't far from the Sacred Heart Cathedral. If the former leader of the Sacred Heart Cathedral, Emmanuel, wasn't an idiot and hadn't died, then the most likely scenario is that he took some survivors and resources to find Hubert and collaborate. The original route through the sewers to Hubert's commercial building camp was no longer accessible. There were at least 1,000 zombies and over a dozen mutant zombies crowded around the manhole cover. It looked like some people from the cathedral camp had escaped into the sewers, unintentionally luring the zombie horde there. To avoid this group of zombies, Lin Yi had no choice but to take a big detour around the devastated area. Fortunately, this horde, during their progress, attracted and concentrated all the wandering zombies in the area. So, the team took a detour yet still reached their destination within half an hour. However, the situation at the commercial building camp was no better than the Sacred Heart Cathedral. The barricades here had been destroyed, the camp was swarming with zombies, and several places were ablaze. A burning document fluttered in the air and landed at Lin Yi's feet. The golden letters of Strongest Survivor Alliance on it were melting away. All signs indicated that this place had just undergone a life and death struggle either last night or this morning. Many soldiers were nauseated and their scalps tingled when they saw the scene before them. The commercial building camp, ever since trading with Lin Yi, had continuously absorbed personnel. It had once been a fortress for survivors, an indestructible citadel, where thousands longed to build a better future. But now, it was nothing but ruins, teeming with tens of thousands of zombies, devouring the last victims. Many soldiers, watching, finally rested their gazes on their boss, Lin Yi, full of gratitude. Several of the strongest camps in Paris had become feeding grounds for zombies. Only they and their families still managed to eat well, live well, and sleep well in this apocalypse. Moreover, during these few days of battle, everyone had came to deeply realize that the boss had enough capability to lead them to go further and better. So, what more could they want? Risking life and death are all that matters. "Boss, look. There are dead zombies over there." Dhuan pointed to a road leading north. Lin Yi looked where he pointed. On the road were hundreds of scattered corpses and traces of the use of firearms and system weapons. But there were far more living zombies than dead ones. Some were still feeding. "Looks like some people escaped," Lin Yi said, beginning to think. Currently, they had two choices. One was to go to the Louvre. The other was to see if they could find surviving troops from the Sacred Heart Cathedral or the commercial building camp. However, it seemed the Louvre could also be in ruins. Lin Yi made up his mind, then waved his hand and moved north, avoiding the large zombie horde. He wasn't making this decision blindly but based on observations of these camps. Although the Louvre had machine guns and a few heavy tanks, the soldiers there had too large an area to defend. The Louvre had barely managed to repel an attack of several thousand zombies last time, thwarting a small wave of zombies, and paid a heavy price even then. Chapter 117, All Fools Paris, on the street. Lin Yi pondered silently. The leader of the commercial building camp, the scar-faced Hubert, was very adept at using the nearby apartment buildings as walls. So, he only needed to defend the street. His warriors were all professionals, and the team included many experienced system users. It seemed that his chances of escaping were great. Lin Yi led his team, weaving through the apartment buildings. They tried their best to avoid attracting the attention of the zombies, but to remain completely unnoticed was impossible. There were still small groups of lone zombies wandering around. A zombie trapped in an apartment saw people walking on the street and immediately began to rage wildly. It used its incomplete limbs to smash the windows fiercely. Its wife, a blonde woman with pale skin and unusually long legs, was drawn to the window by the commotion. The pale female zombie walked to the window and also saw the delicious humans. But unlike her reckless husband, she took a deep breath and then let out a piercing scream. The enormous sound pressure liquefied whatever was inside the husband zombie's skull, seeping out from every orifice. The terrifying scream shattered the glass, and several nearby windows did not escape intact either. What the hell? Lin Yi heard the deafening horrible noise and sensed something was wrong. He waved his hand. Archers, shoot her with fire arrows. Flame mage, set that bitch on fire for me. 4 second-level archers and a flame mage quickly launched an attack on the apartment, the scene resembling thermite grenades exploding within the mutated zombie's apartment. More than a dozen explosions at once. Tongues of fire spewed from the windows, quickly spreading to the upper floors, forming a firework display. Just then, Melanie's voice came through the headset. "Boss, the zombies are coming." Attracted by the scream of the mutated female zombie, all the zombies nearby began to slam open the doors of the apartments, flooding out like a dense tide. "Retreat," Lin Yi ordered decisively. He led his men into a narrow alley between 2 buildings. They blocked the alley entrance with a pile of heavy debris and continued on with the team. He had no time to fight, so he continued to lead the team onward. About 20 minutes later, the team found a safe place to stop and rest. It was already getting dark, and everyone was tired and hungry. The generous leader treated everyone to some sandwiches and steaming hot coffee. After resting for 10 minutes, the team set out again. "Boss, I hear gunfire." Solomon looked around warily. At this moment, Melanie suddenly shouted in panic, "Boss, wait. There's a large group of zombies at the corner." "Another corner?" Lin Yi waved his hand, signaling everyone to stop. Then teleported to the shelter. The notebook screen displayed a building. There was a 5-meter high, over 200-meter long wall, with several watchtowers equipped with fixed machine guns. At this moment, countless bullets were pouring toward the densely packed zombies gathered outside the wall. Melanie looked over the map. "This is a prison, and there's a lot of rumors about this place. People say they're conducting experiments. Is there another way to get there? Like a sewer tunnel, or a back door?" Lin Yi interrupted. He had no time for those creepy stories. "I don't know. Try to find out." Lin Yi finished speaking and returned to the real Paris. With another wave of his hand, all the warriors suddenly found themselves in the center of the shelter. In front of them was a laptop computer. When they saw the situation at the corner, they all gasped, then began to talk among themselves. "I need you to think about how to get to the other side. Except for Ziyuan. You idiot, go find Louis or the professor to help you come up with something." "But, boss," Ziyuan exclaimed in frustration. Everyone burst into laughter, even Melanie couldn't help but chuckle quietly. Seeing this, Ziyuan's eyes lit up. The half-hour brainstorming session ended. Someone suggested becoming Kid. Create a glider, then jump off the roof and fly to the fortress on the other side. Someone suggested becoming Bomb Man. Have Louis make a pile of bombs, explode wherever they go, creating a hellscape with them. Someone suggested charging through the zombie horde with an armored bus. Someone suggested distracting the zombies and storming the fortress. These ideas are crap. Lin Yi finally concluded, especially the idiot who suggested making a glider. What was the concept of a flying target to a machine gunner? A sitting duck in the sky? Louis would have to find a way to deliver the bombs, becoming a human bomb. Or building a catapult? Charging through the mob with a vehicle? Even a tank couldn't break through that many zombies. Distracting them. How? Do I distract them? Or do you? This group, as expected, can't be relied upon. Lin Yi felt a bit depressed. At this moment, the little transparent Zoe suddenly raised her hand and spoke. "Boss, do you remember the girl with the Banshee's whale skill?" "Of course, I remember." "What if this skill had the same effect as the screaming mutant female zombie we encountered before?" "This mission was big, and Zoe was worried for Lin Yi's safety outside. So she would occasionally come to see the situation, and she was present when the mutant female zombie screamed. Lin Yi shouted, "Cute girl? I'm here, boss." The girl was very excited. She finally had a chance to prove her worth. 10 minutes later, Lin Yi and the cute girl stood 100 meters away from the zombie horde. The zombies were focused on the people in the fortress, so they didn't notice what was happening behind them. In front of the cute girl was a powerful sound system, and in her hand was a homemade loudspeaker. "Are you ready?" "Ready. Now put on your headphones, count to 5, then activate your skill." 5 seconds later, the cute girl activated her skill and screamed into the loudspeaker. The sound wave was so forceful that it even made her hair stand on end, with spiderweb-like cracks appearing on the surface of the loudspeaker. The sound wave surged towards the zombie horde with great force. 5 seconds later, the cute girl just removed the loudspeaker from her mouth when Lin Yi immediately teleported her back to the shelter. Then Lin Yi waved his hand and a military jeep appeared by his side. A decal on one side of the jeep's windshield read "Apocalypse Rampage." He jumped in, stepped on the accelerator, the exhaust spewed flames, and the tires left scorched marks on the ground. He swiftly headed to the right, leaving the scene of chaos behind. 3 minutes later, Lin Yi was still flooring the pedal and asked, "Melanie, how's it going?" "Boss, thousands of zombies and dozens of mutant zombies have already moved toward the source of the sound." "Great. Is there a route?" "Stop the car, boss." Nika suddenly shouted in the headset, "I found a tunnel. And the lights inside are still on." Melanie also added. Ecstatic, Lin Yi no longer had to risk forging a bloody path through the zombie horde. "You two did great." Chapter 118, Million Zombie tied the entrance to the tunnel. It turned out to be an unremarkable single-story building, with a sign indicating it was an electric skateboard shop. Lin Yi kicked open the Ajor shop door and emptied the display rack of more than 20 skateboards. Behind the cash register, a yellowed employee code was posted, the last line read. In red pen, "Emergency exit in the warehouse." As Nika said, the secret door was here. Lin Yi touched the employee code and found a button-like thing, pressing it. Inside the wall, the sound of gears turning was heard. A dust-covered door came into view. He pulled out his pistol, kicked the door open, and went inside. Behind the door was a long and straight tunnel corridor. "Boss? What's at the other end?" "Maybe the rumors are true, there's a secret organization here, or they're conducting human experiments." "Nika, your imagination is good, but I think it might be a secret sauna for some high-ranking prison officials, where they mess around, haha." "Mess around? How would they do that?" Nika's voice carried a tone of serious inquiry. Lin Yi didn't expect his joke to be taken seriously by the girl, deciding it was better to keep quiet. He steadily walked along the tunnel, with lights embedded in the walls and floor. There was a light every meter, and the surrounding silence was overwhelmingly monotonous. Bored, Lin Yi pondered, then took out an electric skateboard and rode on it. Then, he hummed a song as he moved forward. The off-key flight of the bumblebee echoed in the tunnel, creating unique surround sound, and blue-purple sparks flew as the skateboard wheels rubbed against the ground. About 10 minutes later, Lin Yi reached the end of the tunnel. A giant door stood before him, along with a rather large button, inscribed with "Open Secret Passage." Fingerprints smeared around the button, with dark red scratches left on the metal door frame. Pressing the button, the door swung open. Behind was a stairway, and dust, dirt, and some trash fell down. Squinting his eyes, he could hear fierce combat sounds nearby, the burst of an M4A1 intermingled with the unique growls of zombies. Just as Lin Yi reached the top of the stairs, he found himself in a large room with many bookshelves. "Who's there?" He was about to claim everything when 2 armed soldiers stormed into the room. The soldiers' combat uniforms were stained with dark red blood, broken ID tags hung on their tactical vests. A young soldier shouted, "Who are you? How did you get here? Who's in charge, Hubert or Emmanuel? Whoever it is, let them see me." Lin Yi seemed unfazed by the barrels pointed at him. He stretched his body and got to work. Books are vital resources in the shelter and one of his primary targets for this trip. Before the young soldier could react, an eager Lin Yi began looting. His hands swept over the shelves, on War and Encyclopedia of Agriculture disappeared in turn. "Stop. What are you doing?" The young soldier stood there agape, watching the entire bookshelf filled with books vanish. Each shelf held at least 100 books. And now, they were gone just like that? Is he even human? One soldier, witnessing this scene, wet his pants and ran off to report the situation. Another soldier remained, backing away in panic, holding his gun while trembling. The safety on his assault rifle was switched on and off repeatedly, and his magazine fell to the ground in his shaking. He, too, was afraid the strange man in front of him might inadvertently make him disappear. A few minutes later. I've brought the commander. What on earth, oh my god. The young soldier looked shocked, unconsciously rubbing his hand on the doorframe. Just a moment ago, the room held thousands of books, but now it was empty. At this point, a man with broken glasses stepped forward, nervously asking. Hello, can you tell me who you are and how you got here? I'm Lin Yi, the potato seller. Lin Yi was speechless at how his handsome self was forgotten by the other party. It was unimaginable. Fortunately, the man with glasses looked confused, but then his expression turned to joy. It's you? How is this possible? This is great, wonderful. I must take you to see the leader. After giving some orders to the soldiers, the man with glasses quickly led the guest to a room. This was a small conference room that could hold about 30 people, currently empty. Lin Yi didn't wait long. About 3 minutes later, the scar-faced leader, Hubert, burst in, beaming with excitement. Lin Yi? Ha ha ha. You're alive, just as I thought. I knew you were my lucky star. Right? Ha ha ha. The old soldier said, preparing to give Lin Yi a big, warm hug. Lin Yi quickly dodged. You never said that. No, I don't swing that way. Ha ha ha. It's not too late to say it now, lucky star, you came just in time. I'm in big trouble. I can tell. How did you end up here? And what happened at the commercial building? It's a complete mess. It turned out that a war broke out between the fanatics and the feminists, two camps. Then, at the height of the battle, the Louvre intervened and wiped out both camps. Afterward, a gang of marauders appeared out of nowhere, wreaking havoc, killing, looting supplies and equipment, destroying gear. Then the red zombies appeared, incredibly powerful. How powerful? The red zombies actually built a bridge on the other side of the Seine River, which runs through Paris city center. Can you believe it? A bridge. Thousands of zombies jumped into the river, building a bridge-like structure with their bodies. Hubert spoke with fear in his eyes. But what came next was even more terrifying. Hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of zombies crossed that river. Like a landslide, they leveled the Louvre in an instant. Though some people managed to escape and join the Sacred Heart Cathedral, it was just the beginning of a disaster. The million zombie horde roamed into the city. The Sacred Heart Cathedral held out for nearly 24 hours, and with the soldiers' full efforts, the situation was just stabilized. The main force of the zombies. Thousands of mutated zombies appeared, and the defense of the Sacred Heart Cathedral, as fragile as paper, was breached within half an hour. Only a few hundred people managed to retreat. The next day, the million zombie horde arrived at the commercial building camp. Even though Hubert reinforced defenses and devised an evacuation plan. But what good was it? They were utterly routed. I led us here after escaping. This place was originally occupied by others, but I managed to persuade them. Hubert looked exhausted, knowing joining here only extended their survival time. This fortress couldn't withstand a million zombies, let alone being completely surrounded. But now, it was different. Someone entered, which meant they could also get out. This person was the savior. This was, damn it, hope for survival. Tell us, how did you get here? Hubert asked, his face filled with excitement. Lin Yi was about to answer. Bam. The door was suddenly slammed open. Two men walked into the room. Lin Yi looked closely. Hey, they were old acquaintances. Chapter 119, giving you two choices fortress, inside the room. The door was suddenly slammed open, and two men walked in. One was the former leader of the cathedral, Emmanuel. The other was Blaise, who is now the leader of the survivors in this fortress. Once, when he was still in the small survivor camp, Lin Yi saved his life. Blaise looked at Lin Yi and laughed. I've been sending people to find you, hoping to repay the favor. It's really you. Emmanuel seemed to have aged 10 years. Does it mean you have a way to escape this death trap by being here? His skinny fingers tightly clawed onto the table edge, his joints turning pale blue from excessive force. Lin Yi heard this, smiled lightly, and nodded. But after a moment, his gaze turned serious, and his tone became solemn. I'll be straightforward. You have two ways to save yourselves. The first offers you a slim chance of survival, while the second is completely safe but comes with many conditions. Let's hear about the first way. Hubert said as he lit a costly cigar. This be thing. If he makes the wrong choice today, he might never have a chance to smoke it again. Lin Yi nodded without any concealment. There is a tunnel under this building. I came in through it. It leads to an electric skateboard repair shop 3 kilometers to the south. I know that place. With so many people, we can easily become prey. Blaise's voice was heavy with pain. Choosing this way means that the small number of people who escape must become deserters. Everyone trusts you and makes you the leader, and when you're in dire straits, you take your family and run. Trademark playing out a 3 kingdoms scenario here? My great lord? Emmanuel instinctively grasped the table corner, his nails scratching 3 deep marks on the solid wood surface as if trying to hold on to a final lifeline. He asked tensely, "What is the second choice then?" Lin Yi spoke seriously, leaving no room for doubt. "The second choice is to join my team. I will take you to a safe place, but from then on, I am the leader. Follow my orders." This. The 3 looked hesitant. Lin Yi raised his hand to interrupt. "I haven't finished yet. There's a downside to this place. If I die, everyone there might not survive either." "All right, now you can ask questions," Lin Yi said, grinning widely. He pulled a carrot out of the shelter, gnawing on it like Bugs Bunny. Blaze only thought for a moment before immediately raising his hand. "I join." His life was saved by Lin Yi. At that time, Lin Yi saved him, his prowess akin to a god descending, leaving him supremely awed. Afterward, the other party did not take advantage of the situation but left him precious bullets and food. This shows his character. Blaze wanted to remember this favor for a lifetime, so once chaos erupted in Paris, he kept sending people to find him, hoping for a chance to repay. But fate is a bummer. He hasn't repaid him yet. He might owe another life. But this is also good, following such a leader with strength and character is promising. Blaze thought and asked, "But how do we get to your safe place?" "Let me show you." Lin Yi walked over to Blaze and placed his hand on his shoulder. Instantly, the 2 disappeared. About a minute later, they reappeared, which allowed the other 2 older men to breathe a sigh of relief. "Hey, now I have to join. You can't chase me away. I'll go get my people ready." Blaze laughed, his eyes sparkling, then ran off. Left behind were the other 2 leaders, looking confused. Lin Yi saw their expressions and couldn't help but chuckle. "Do you want to see it too?" The 2 old comrades nodded vigorously. A few seconds later, Lin Yi led them around the shelter. Seeing large fields of potatoes, vegetables, and more crops, the 2 former leaders exclaimed. "So this is your farm?" "That's right." Emmanuel's hand trembled slightly. "So you can stay safely here for as long as you want?" "Pretty much, but this place is like an iceberg in the ocean, surrounded by other icebergs. We've encountered one before, and it was full of zombies." "I understand. So even here, it's not absolutely safe." Emmanuel initially thought he found heaven in this hell, but it seemed the heavenly place was just a slightly more comfortable hell. Lin Yi shrugged. "In this world, there is no absolutely safe place, if you understand." "I understand." The one replying was Hubert. He said solemnly, "I wish to join you, but may I make a small request?" "Tell me." "I can take orders from you, but I hope to continue commanding my original squad." "I thought you would retire?" Lin Yi asked, somewhat surprised. Hubert expressed dissatisfaction, clenching his fists tightly. "Are you kidding me? I may not be young, but my blood still burns hot. If I live a civilian life, I will wither and die." How should Lin Yi respond? He never thought that one could become such a teenage rebel after being older. Lin Yi nodded, "As long as it's not foolish passion, but you'll report to Solomon. I'll have you meet each other later." After he finished speaking, he looked at Emmanuel. "What about you?" "Me? What am I? I'm not even a leader now. Only a few survived during the evacuation. If they follow you, they are yours." "Okay, I agree to join, but I can't guarantee that I can persuade others to join you. Those who don't wish to join can escape through the tunnel. We will provide them with a few days' food, then they can go wherever they want." Emmanuel nodded gratefully as he heard this. Returning to the reality in Paris, the 2 elders quickly went to prepare. Lin Yi climbed to the top of the watchtower, looking around to assess the defense situation. The searchlight from the watchtower scanned the periphery, revealing swarms of zombies moving like tides. Lin Yi tightened his grip on the railing, noticing new cracks on the eastern wall. Although there were countless zombies, for now, they seemed not to have launched a real attack, as if they were waiting for something. The only disturbance at the moment was the group of large zombies, banging rotten flesh against the wall, each hit making the whole structure tremble. Of course, they were immediately shot dead by machine gunners, but the door had already begun to be damaged. One of the mutant zombies even punched a hole. Luckily, someone immediately went ahead to swiftly weld a new steel plate onto it. The arc light from the welding machine flickered in the night. Chapter 120, Zombie Storm Inside the Fortress. Everyone took their few bags of supplies and evacuated from within. The total number was approximately 1,500 people. Think about the 2 camps, originally had 10 times this number, and now. Lin Yi saw Hubert waving at him. He then descended from the watchtower, military boots crushing through broken glass, causing a series of sparks that splashed against the wall. He stood before this group of terrified and uneasy people, his expression stern, the spotlights behind him from the fortress just outlining the cold, hard outline of his shoulders. Your leader should have already explained this to you. I promise to save you, take you to a safe place, and provide you food and shelter. In exchange, you will work for me. I won't ask you to do the impossible, but I also won't tolerate freeloaders. To get there, you'll have to sign a contract. Remember, if you break the contract or do something particularly heinous, I won't show mercy. You can call me warlord if you want, but I am a tyrant who gives you the chance to survive, and not just barely hang on. His voice was like a taut steel cable, deep but with incredible penetration power, like a heavy hammer striking everyone's heart. Many were extremely frightened, mainly because the man's presence was overwhelmingly strong. They had never seen anything like it before. Even Hubert and Emmanuel's faces turned somewhat pale. All they had seen before was the amicable merchant Lin Yi, never this side of him. Hidden too deep. Frighteningly shocking. Only Blaze was a bit better. After all, he had seen Lin Yi tear apart zombies with his bare hands, but his hands still instinctively trembled. Lin Yi summoned Regina to have this new administrator speak to everyone. They were the sole survivors from each camp. They had endured hellish hardships to get here, so they weren't a mindless horde. After about 10 minutes, these people completely understood what was going on. Those who agree to my conditions can sign the contract. After signing, you'll discover you're in a safe place. This young lady next to me will help you settle in and tell you what to do. You must listen to her and do as she says. If you don't agree to my terms, I will give you 3 days worth of food and lead you to a secret tunnel, but afterward, you'll have to fend for yourselves. Lin Yi finished speaking and waved his hand. Apart from the soldiers responsible for defense, everyone else saw the following shelter notice. Please read and familiarize yourself with the shelter rules. If you agree to the following rules, say I agree, and you will be transported to the shelter. Please note, the space-time shelter's owner is the shelter's king and absolute master. As a shelter resident, you have the right to have a place to live, obtain food, receive protection. You are prohibited from touching the owner's belongings, conflicting with other survivors, damaging the shelter, terminating this contract. You need to obey all orders given by the owner. Other matters, the contract can be changed at any time. Without the owner's permission, you may not leave the shelter. Appendix: no one, including the owner, may force you against your will to engage with any man, woman and unknown being. This clause cannot be altered or removed from the contract. By agreeing to all the terms of this contract, you will be automatically transported to the space-time shelter. Seconds later, people gradually began to disappear, leaving only 11 people behind. Lin Yi waved again, and Hubert and Blaze appeared before him. Gather the soldiers on the city walls. We're leaving here. Lin Yi ordered. Hubert pointed at the remaining 11 people, asking, what about them? They decided to fend for themselves. Give them enough food for 3 days, I'll lead them to the tunnel, and then I'll leave here myself. Hubert and Blaze nodded, laughed, and executed the orders. Lin Yi checked the fortress's supplies and found their food was not even enough for a day, and there was no water at all. No wonder the 3 leaders agreed to join without much discussion with their subordinates. Just then, Hubert ran to Lin Yi's side. Lin. Boss. The food has already been distributed to them. I'll handle the rest myself. Go help Regina organize your people. All right, boss. Lin Yi nodded, sent Hubert to the shelter, and then looked at the warehouse. There, soldiers were moving machine guns and boxes of ammunition from inside the fortress. The air was filled with the smell of burning rotten flesh. Distant wails rose and fell. Just then, a soldier at the city gate rushed over and shouted to Blaze, Leader, the situation is dire. Zombies have started to become agitated. I'm not the leader anymore? Blaze glared, shouting sternly. The soldier was taken aback, quickly reacted, and promptly reported to Lin Yi. Boss, it's chaos. A group of giant mutant zombies is approaching the city gate. And the zombie horde is also gathering in front of the walls. Forget all of it, get over here quickly. Upon hearing this, Lin Yi's expression changed grayly, and he quickly ordered. In an instant, everyone dragging heavy boxes dropped them and ran as fast as they could. Several soldiers stumbled while running but promptly crawled back up using hands and feet. The guards on the walls also left their posts and ran towards their new boss. Lin Yi met them halfway, waved his hand, and sent them the same information. They were transported one by one to the shelter. Lin Yi waved again, and Blaze was also sent to the shelter, leaving him alone outside. A cocktail appeared in his hand. It wasn't gasoline inside, but a potent burning agent brewed by Louis, with the transparent liquid gently swaying in the glass, refracting the eerie colors of the distant fire. Lin Yi tossed 3 in succession, igniting the city gate and the surrounding area. 2 seconds later, the massive metal door turned red hot, but the huge zombies on the other side disregarded their burned hands and continued to batter the door relentlessly. Holes kept appearing in the metal door, followed by huge tongues of flame spewing from the holes.